Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me tell you something. This is a gentleman who's from Virginia Beach. And I know this guy since the 1980s. He used to hang out with a girlfriend of ours named the legendary Linda Dunley. Then years after, this guy became a multiple world champion. But throughout the whole time, he's always been so cool in the gang. Without further ado, we got Quadranim, Jack, Doc in the house. How you feeling, brother?
What's up? What's up? What's up, Jerry? I'm in Virginia Beach, and we open as far as the COVID thing going. They let us occupy 75%. So my students they never all come at one time anyway. So I'm still just running. I'm still doing my thing. It's a lot of schools out there that ain't doing it, but I'm blessed. I'm blessed, my brother. And and you see what I'm doing. I'm repping rec. Repping rec too, baby. Repping rec.
Well, I appreciate that, because I still think they're the best ones ever made, but I'm a little biased, But it's not about me, man. It's about you, brother. So let's just say this. You've been in Virginia Beach teaching, but how long you been there? Actually, you know what? Before we even start, let's go back to the beginning. What was your inspiration, desperation, or motivation to even start teaching or taking martial arts?
Hey, it was a classic story, man. I said, when I was like a young kid, when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, I was the oldest of 16 grandkids. Most of the people that followed me were girls. So when they played with doll babies, I played with doll babies. When they braided their hair, I braided their hair. But then when I got like 10, 11, 12 years old, I go outside to play with the fellas, and they playing football. I had no idea how to play football or baseball or basketball. So, I was kind of raised up in a feminine atmosphere because I had an absentee father. My father was an alcoholic, so my father was nowhere in the picture. He lived in the same town. I would see him once a week, and one weekend out the month, I would spend with him, and then 1 week in the summer, I would spend with him. But he was an absentee father. He was a good guy, but he was just had a drinking problem. So my mama put me in piano lessons. I quit. She put me in guitar lessons. I quit. She put me in basketball. I got to ride the bench the whole year. I got in one game, threw the ball over the backboard. They took me out. They put me in football. I didn't like getting tackled. Put me in baseball. I didn't like standing in the center field waiting for the ball to come to me. I quit just about everything I started. So my mama, she went to high school with my instructor, and she took me to the karate studio, and she says, I'm gonna put you in this karate, and this is the last thing, and you're gonna do this, and you're not quitting this. You quit everything else, you're not gonna quit. So when we walked into my instructor studio, she says they had went to high school together. So she said, I haven't seen you in 20 years or so, or whatever. And my mom said, yeah, he said, my instructor said, who do we have here? She said, this is my son Jack. He's a sissy. He runs from fights. So my instructor told her, said, well, if you give him to me and don't interfere with my training, I guarantee you I would change him. Now, my mom said, okay. I said, Mom, what you doing? He said, shut up, mister. I sat up, and then he said, take your shoes off and go get on the floor. I didn't even have a uniform. I had a blue jeans and a T-shirt. That was my first class. So that was the beginning of the torture. I was too big to compete with the kids, but I was just too small to fight with the men. I was 14 at the time, so I ended up fighting with the men. Back then was no safety gear. They would hit punch to the body just as hard as they could, and I was always the victim. So I didn't realize from that point on, he saw something in me, and he was starting to groom me for what I'm doing now. So I tried to quit every class. I tried to quit.
Well, I'm sure they tried to make you quit. They was trying to make you quit too.
Yeah. So I lived like 9 blocks from the studio. So whenever I tried to quit, my mom would call, hey, Mr. Hankins, Jack said he's not coming. He would send 2 black belts to come to my house to get me. My mother would leave the front door unlocked. They would come in. I hear them coming up the steps. And then they would beat me up in my bedroom and say, get dressed. Why we got to come down here and get you? Get dressed. And my mama says, everything all right up there? He said, oh, yeah, Miss Doc, we just getting Jack dressed. They would beat my ass up in my own bedroom, in my own house. So then when we come down, I'm crying. She said, what's wrong? I said, nothing. And so we run back to the studio. And when I slowed down running, they was running behind me. They would punch and kick me. So then I said, okay, in order for me not to take this other beating, I had to stay out in front. So we run back to the studio. And then at the end of the night, we fought every night. Our class was like 2 hours long. So that last 45 minutes of class, everybody fought. men, women, children, didn't matter. You had to fight. So they would beat me up and pick on me. And I said pick on me because I didn't even know how to block. They would beat me up and say, why we got to come to your house and get you? Why do I have to come? Every time you come, it's going to get worse. So eventually I did the math. I'm like, I'm taking a beating at my house. I'm taking a beating running to the studio. I'm taking the beating at the studio. I said, well, if I just go to the studio and show up, I get one beating. So I start doing my homework, get my lunch or my snack, and then I go to the studio and I sit and wait. I was beating my teacher to the school. So eventually he gave me a key. He said, all right, mister, this is what you do when you come in. Open the school. We had a hardwood floor. Dust mop the floor, clean the bathroom, dump the trash cans, clean my office, make sure the dressing room's clean. That was my job. See, now I'm getting groomed for what I'm doing now. I didn't know it. So then it got to the point where, like I said, I tried to quit. I couldn't quit, so I did the math, and I'm not taking it. I'm not missing class. Only time I could miss class is if I was sick or if I was doing homework. And sometimes I used to get migraines when I was a teenager, and I'd be throwing up all over the place, and that was the only time I could quit class. Then it got to the point where on Saturdays, my instructor would always take me out to lunch. After class, he said, all right, come on, Mr. Me and a couple of other students. We go to a restaurant, and he started preaching and dictating about the history of the martial arts. He was pretty much like you, Jerry, a historian. He could tell you who fought who, when that happened, when they joined up, when they separated, when the split came. He was a historian. My instructor's name was Master Hankins, Harold Hankins, and he got black belt from Kiwayne Kim, who was trained with Kaiken Toriyama, who trained with Kensen Yabu, who, the history goes way back to like 1600s through Shaolin. But so my instructor, he groomed me and he beat me and he groomed me. I mean, I'm saying literally beat with the bamboo stick and the pad. He drilled us and drilled us and drilled us, and it was like forever. We would fight in class like we was going to war. We would beat each other down. I would get beat down most of the time. But then when I got about blue belt, it started changing. It got harder for the grown men to hit me and easier for me to hit them. So then when I hit like about brown belt, then I started tagging them back. Mr. Hank, my teacher, always said, Jack, you beat me a little.
What age are we talking here? Because you're talking about from 14 to what, brown belt, what, you're 17 now?
15, 16. Because it took me 2.5 years to make black belt at that time. And we was training 2 hours a day. And it wasn't like the classes now where you're 45 minutes or 30 minutes and then you're out.
How often were
you It was
there?
like 4 days a week minimum. But see, again, that you had to show up at class. But see, I had the other black belt guys that would come to my house and get me where they needed a pad holder or somebody to train with or somebody to kick on. So I was basically training like 5 days a week. So they would come and get me, open the school, and we go and train. So we had a guy named Bernard, had one arm. He had a shoulder amputated. Bernard had the best legs that I ever seen, and he was fast. He weighed about 125, 130 pounds. He would round kick me in my mouth and bust my lip and laugh at me. He said, come on, boy, I'm the handicap. They say I'm handicapped, but you got both your arms and both your legs, and you can't do what I do. He beat me up. He bust my lip, make my mouth bleed, and laugh at me. So eventually it got to the point where I could kick as fast as him. So then it's like, oh, man, you kick just like Bernard. Bernard used to pattern himself after Michael Warren. So everything that Michael Warren did, Bernard did. When Bernard did it, I did it. So it's like I'm copying Michael Warren through Bernard. I never knew who Michael Warren was until later. Albert Cheeks. And Albert Cheeks is actually my master instructor right now that I'm under. So
you said a mouthful there because obviously it was an important time in your life. So at some point, you start saying, you know what, I kind of like this thing. I'm not just a punching bag. I'm starting to hit people back. I'm right. Just shy of being a grown man. And
right.
So continue this because now you're about 16, almost 17 years old. You just got your new Jack Black belt. Let's talk about your black belt exam. How was that? I can imagine how that was.
Man, my black belt exam, man, I was doing all kind of crazy. I had to fight everybody in class and had to do one-step sparring, had to do all your forms, had to do your board break. And now my board break for my black belt test, I had to run, jump over a person standing on the horseback stance holding the board in front of them. I had to come from behind, jump over, and back kick before I land and break the board.
Whoa.
And then that was one of my breaks. And then I had to do a triple spinning horse kick. They're called a horse kick. They call them hook kicks now. It had 3 boards, 1, 2, 3. I had to spin and hook kick that one, spin and hook kick this one, spin and hook kick the top one, and break them before putting my foot down.
And those boards was thick, half an inch fine. They were not today's
That was the
thing.
real stuff. And it wasn't that Poulon stuff that they use now. It was like thick stuff.
You hit it wrong, and you have a problem. It will scratch you, or even when you broke it in the middle, the splinters would get you, right?
Right. Yes, sir. So like I said, when I like hit brown belt, it started getting easier for me to hit the guys that was hitting me, and harder for them to hit me. And I started getting together, and I start, like trying to hold my own. And then it got to the point where after I made black belt, then at first when I was a color belt, I used to peek through the door, like push the door and see who was in there, and go, oh man, I got to fight him today. Then it got to the point where they was peeping through the door looking to see if I was there. They had to fight me. So, back then, it wasn't a lot of light contact. It was like hit the guy as hard as you can. So that's what we did. And when I start my first national tournament that I attended was the Dennis Brown's tournament. That was the closest one to me. I didn't have a sponsor. So every year he would give us a tournament. I tried to make a point, and I would get beat up pretty good. I would lose. So I was like, I want to get on this circuit right here, and I want to try to win me a title. So what I did, I didn't focus on that was a long-term goal. So what I did, I focused on my area. I said, if I could win everything in the state of Virginia, then I could get myself together and step out on the national circuit. So with that being said, I ended up being a Promoters Plus champion. Everhart used to have a circuit, Promoters Plus, and Robert Everhart. And so I was a 35-year-old champion for Promoters Plus that 1 year. And then I became the Virginia State Karate Association VKA champion for like, I think 6 years in a row for my age bracket, 35 to 49. Then I started hitting the national circuit, and that's when I started. And I mean, I had went to the U.S. Open when they had it in Tampa, Florida 1 year, and at the Playboy Bunny Club. I think you were there. You had the red, white, and blue striped top on. That's when I actually first seen you do your thing. And I was like, who is this guy? So needless to say, I found out who you were because you was tearing up the division. I didn't fight you because I ain't make it to you. But I hit like I said, I started hitting the NASCAR circuit in 2010, and I ended up getting a sponsor. So in 2010, I won the 50 and over world champion title. Then I did it again in 2011. But then I got injuries, calf muscle, thigh muscle. Now I'm dealing with a hip injury. But at the same time, I want to do it one more time in the 60 and over division because I'm 62.
No,
so I'm gonna get up.
So let me backtrack a little bit, only because we got a few decades that we jumped, actually centuries.
Right.
We went from the 1980
right.
to 2010.
Right.
But I remember, when was it that, and not that we have to go into all the details, but I'm really curious because every time I would see you at Capitals, you used to hang out with Linda Downey. So how did you guys become friends?
Okay, that tournament down in Tampa at the U.S. Open, one of my friends was like, yo, man, there go Linda Denley over there, man. You think you suave? I dare you to go over there and talk to her. I'm like, I ain't no punk. I go over there and talk to her. All she can say is no. So I walked over to her and I said, how you doing, Miss Denley? I said, my name is Jack Dark. I said, if I get a chance, I said, I'd like to have lunch with you. And she looked at me like, okay, yeah, right. So needless to say, she was doing her thing. She was an A-lister. I was a C-lister. I hadn't made it to the B-list yet. But anyway, she saw my face. So then I went to a tournament up in New York a few months later.
Empire States?
Yeah, Empire State. And I went up there, and then I ran into her there. And me and my buddies, I had 2 other guys with me. We just jumped on the bus and went up there. We had never been to New York before, so we go in and just like looking all around at the tall buildings, and so we get out. We took a taxi to the hotel, and we get out, and she's standing out. I said, "How you doing, Miss Denley?" She said, "I remember you. Your name is Dark, Jack Dark." I'm like, "Yeah."
New York.
So
New
then
York.
my friend that was with me, he was like, I didn't think she was gonna remember your name, man. I said, yeah, man. I said, I'm Jack Doc, man. You know who I am. And he said, oh, you on your ego trip. I said, no, I'm not on the ego trip. I said, but you dared me to go meet her, and now she remember who I am. So anyway, we didn't have a hotel room. So Miss Denley pulled some strings and made sure that we got a hotel room. So that's how our friendship started. So then after that, every time we go to a tournament, she looked for me, I look for her, and we're like, hey, what's up, what's up? And then we hang out together. And then that's when I started meeting all you guys, Anthony Price and Richard Plowden.
I didn't even know you was competing. Because every time I saw you, wasn't in a uniform. I guess you must have competed and then you changed up already or something.
I lost. I got my butt kicked and lost. Like, what am I walk around with my uniform on for? Because I lost. It's like, I mean, you know, I was still learning the game.
This was in the mid '80s. I'm talking about.
Yes.
Look, you saying it like it was just yesterday, guys. We're talking about during an era where a whole bunch of techniques were being seen.
Yeah.
There were some superheroes that were fighting.
Look, Mafia Holloway was in my division, and I was like, damn. He was hitting people with them spin kicks. I was like, damn.
He used to hit people with the cartwheels too.
Yeah.
He just humiliate people.
Exactly. So when I saw Mafia, I was like, I wanted to fight him, but I was scared to fight him. But at the same time, I said, well, he just had to whip my ass. I'm going to go in there and get him. I never made it to him. I would get eliminated in the first round.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought maybe you was Linda's student or something. Because every time I saw Linda in the tournament, I saw you, and I'm saying, okay, maybe he came from Texas. I don't know. I'm assuming because why would I think otherwise? You know. And then for years.
Look, you know that saying that says if you want to be successful, hang around with successful people. She was the first successful person that I met that was an A-lister, so I started hanging out with her. I said, well, if I hang out with her, then maybe somebody else will let me hang out with them too. So, but her and I became really good friends, and she actually turned me on to the EFC, Educational Funding Company, when I first opened my school. She was like, how your school doing? I said, I'm struggling. Jerry, you know my story. I've been struggling off and on. I had good weeks and bad weeks. And then come to find out that you was a spokesman for the EFC. That was another thing. I was like, well, Jerry endorsing them, and then Miss Denley tell me to try them, so I tried them. Then I found out that Dennis Brown was on the board, so I was comfortable with doing it because of the people that was involved with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear it loud and clear. So again, we're talking about literally decades. It's 2020, years just about gone. We're talking about the mid 1980s. Now, if you do the math there, we're talking about 30 plus years, 35 years easily. And my son's 37, so we're talking about. My point is that I always believe, and this is the truth, Kwajanem Jack Doc is my brother. There's no doubt about it. Him and I have a relationship that a lot of people may not realize, but we've talked early and late, through ups and downs and betweens and around the corners and so on and so forth. And again,
you could tell we're family because we always fuss about stuff. Family fuss. You fuss at me about stuff and I laugh at you and you get in my ass and you're like, get your shit together. So
somebody got to do it. I mean, somebody got to do it, and that's the whole thing, guys, that realistically, I strongly believe that if it wasn't for martial arts, my life would have been different because those weekends, instead of being in New York, getting into trouble, I was away seeing people like Linda Denley, who I think is the best point fighter of all time, period. Forget about man, woman, children. Her career is ridiculous, guys. It's good. She could play some basketball too. Holy crap, man!
Yes,
she could. She's a real deal athlete. Looking forward to. She'll be the first woman that I'll be doing this interview in this manner. Even though I've been doing this back since 1994 when I started the show. Believe it or not. But you've seen some of the shows. What do you think so far?
Man, I'm impressed. Like I told you, I was reluctant to do this interview because I just saw you interview Michael John White and then Sugar Crosses. I'm like, Jerry, I ain't qualified. I ain't up there. Then you had to, again, slap me upside the head and bring me to my reality check. In this Virginia area, in the Hampton Roads area, I'm like the go-to guy. Most of the people around here, they're like, call me and ask me what's going on, how to do this and how to do that. And I'm like, I'm just like the next karate school owner, just like the next guy, just trying to make things happen. But I've been promoting. I have a tournament that I promote, Battle of the Seven Cities. I've been promoting that for 18 years up to Covert. And you know, I get a pretty good turnout. You know, probably about, I'm saying for me now, I ain't comparing my tournament to nobody else's tournament. I get about 250 competitors and about 400 spectators. So that's a good day for me.
Yeah.
You know, I know you got these other schools that do 600 competitors and, you know, 1,000 spectators. I'm not at that level. You know, I'll take it if it comes, but I'm not going to, you know, be caught up to the point where that's just overwhelming, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, you know, you have that prerogative in terms of comfort zones too, because it really what comes out to is comfort zones. You know, because for example, when you went from the local circuit to the national circuit, there was a different level of pressure or
Yes.
uncomfortable, right? So yeah, let's talk about that already. How was that transition?
Yes.
Because people don't talk about that, but it's a big
You
difference.
know, when you fight the local circuit, you run into the same guys all the time, and the same guys know your technique and they know how to counter you and you know how to counter them, and they come hard, you know, because they feel like they got to prove something. Then you go to the national circuit and you never seen none of these guys before, and you know you'll get the national competitors, and then you get the locals from that area, so you don't know who you're gonna fight. So you always have to have your A game. Now I'm gonna tell you, I can count on one hand, the losses that I took on the national circuit. The Cat, Ernest the Cat Miller, I fought him down in where were we? We was in California, compete nationals. I said I'm gonna jump in here and get him, and then I'm gonna run from him. Hey, the Cat caught me with a left hook and slid me across the floor. And after that, it was all his fight. A left hook dead on the chin. The Cat beat me. He spanked me. And I was like, well, I just wanted to beat him just so I could say I beat me a WCW wrestler, but it wasn't like that. WCW, hey, the Cat put the smoke on me. And then I lost to James Sisko. James Sisko, I thought I could just run in. I didn't know who James Sisko was, but I knew who he was when he finished. James Sisko, he got me. And then another local boy down here named Brian Mays, he got me. Who else? Who else did I lose to on the national circuit? Oh, Willie Marshall. Willie Marshall beat me the first time. Then the second time I beat him. And then that guy from New Jersey, Eugene Floyd. Eugene Floyd, I was like, Eugene Floyd would score on me and then put his hand up in the air and walk around like, I'm like, who is this guy? I knew who he was when he finished with me. Eugene Floyd got me too. Like I said, that's the ones that stand out that really got me. That I was like, wasn't expecting them to be that good. Because most of the guys in my age bracket, they're slowing down, they're getting slower, they're getting older, you know. But these guys were stroking. They were stroking. So I figured if I could drop my ass kick on them, if I can get them stand still for a split second, I could part their hair with an ass kick. Yeah. But everybody was moving. Eugene Floyd, you know, he reminded me of you northern New Yorkers and New Jersey people. Y'all like talk more than I talk. I'm like, I don't know nobody that talk more trash than me. And then they was talking trash and beating up on me. Oh, then Jerry Fontanez. Every time I fought that guy, Jerry spanked me, but I scored on him one time. He did a hook kick and missed, and I hit him with a back fist on the back of his helmet. And Jerry Fontanez turned around and said, you hit me? I was like, yeah, that's the only point I got. You remember that, Jerry?
Yes, sir. Then we have that on video. Rest in peace. That was the day that I was supposed to fought with one of the many times with Gerald Dawson. Him and I.
Yeah. I never got a chance to fight Gerald. No, I ain't never get a chance to fight with Gerald. But you know, like I said, I was just trying to be in that element of warriors and champions. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're in that element, like I said, if you're hanging out with the A-listers, like what they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to get some new friends.
Yeah, you're not in the right room.
I was trying to get in that A-list group so I can be around people that was more superior than myself, so that making me bring my game up, or they can educate me on how to bring my game up, you know?
Well, let me tell you something. That's something that most people just can't handle. They can't handle being uncomfortable. But in uncomfortability is where you actually learn. If it's the same thing, it gets boring, it gets old, and you don't improve. You learn from your losses. I blocked with my face. I got my jaw broken. I've said this many a times, guys. I don't hide what would be the greatest lessons of my life. We do not learn from doing good things. We learn from our mistakes. But most people's ego does not want to feel that feeling of losing again.
Right.
You know, So we're gonna wind this thing up because again, we started a little late, and I know they have things to do. I got things to do also. But man, let me tell you something. I've always been appreciative of you because you've always been kind to me, and I appreciate that. A lot of guys that are just fake, and I'm not really.
Right.
You can see through that really quick, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, that's their prerogative. I mean, some people don't like my style, and I get it. I mean, I don't know if I would like it either if I'm beating up their instructor. If you're beating up my instructor, doing stuff like that, I don't know if I would like me either, you know. But it's nothing
Right.
personal, you know. But can we just talk about one little thing before we leave? There's a difference between Quadrant that teaches and Jack Dark that competes. And I see the difference because the Jack
Go
Dark
ahead.
that competes, that guy is like a bling, bling, bling. The wilder the uniform, better. Because I made a uniform. Yeah, I Rexu.
Yeah.
That was completely different. But you wanted it like that, and I hooked you up with it.
It was a lime green with a black collar, black piping. Yeah.
But the fabric was different.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It was a shiny. It was a shiny one. You know, it was a shiny one. I think that's probably the only one in shiny honeys that you made, but it's made out of the rec suit material.
No, but it wasn't a shiny hiney. It was everything shiny. That's the difference, right? Because it was a bling bling uniform. See,
right.
I call them shiny hiney uniform because that's the only part that they have shine. That fabric that you have is called warp. A warp knit is what they use on the shoulder pads of football jerseys. So that's where you see it has big grooves into it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it still has that shine, but it doesn't stick to your body.
Right.
You know, so these are some of the things that had to come up realistically. That's a uniform that, and price-wise, should have been 4 times the price because of the fabric.
Right.
If you look at the uniforms, shoulder pads, that's where they had the heart, and then they usually have mesh on the other part.
Right.
You know, but what I wanted to do with the rec suit, the real easy kicking suits, really, they were called fast feet ones. That was the original name, I figured. But I'm still competing. People are not going to want to buy them if I beat them. So, but anyway, so the dealers. Mira, estoy grabando un show.
Usted sabe que yo lo quiero.
Mira, Gloria, esto está grabando, es show mío.
Ay, no fregues. ¿Quién es que ríe?
So this is the man who's saying it. That's Jack Dark. This is.
Hello, my dear.
Dígale que yo lo quiero porque vos sos un gran hombre.
She says that I'm a good man.
I agree.
Gracias. Appreciate it. Gracias.
Bueno, ahí lo dejo, no lo friego, me voy a apagar esa cosa porque está muy caliente.
So anyway, so I guess I get the thumbs up. Yeah. So hey, listen, guys, we're live, and when you're live, a lot of things happen, right, guys? So
that's right.
So when it comes down to it, Jack. Gracias. When it comes down to it, literally, martial arts is the reason why we get up, I think. I mean, of course, we have children, we have grandchildren, like as I do. You know.
Right.
But if you wasn't a martial artist, because obviously you never wanted to do it, somewhere along the line, your body and your mind and your spirit said, this is what I am.
And you know what? My instructor, I asked them one time, I say, what made you want to be an instructor or teach karate? My instructor, he also had a story. He said he was bullied. He learned martial arts so he could get revenge on people. I'm like, well, that's not what the principle. He said, well, you do what you do, and I'm gonna do what I do. I get it. I did it to pay some people back, and he did. I saw him literally. Some guy walked up. He walked down the street. He saw a guy that he hadn't seen in 40 years, and he beat the guy up. And he said, "Don't do what I do." I'm like, okay, but he groomed me to do what I'm doing now. And I said, well, what was the deal when you saw me? He said, you needed my help. He said, and I wanted to help you. So that's the same principle that I do. But when people come to my school, to come through my door, I look at them and I say, this person needs my help. That's why I do what I do. It's God's will. I've tried to close my school a bunch of times because I was like, okay, my lease is up. I don't want to do this no more. Next thing I know, I get 5 or 6 new students, and they all need my help. They either product of a single parent where they need a mentor, or the military, their mother's out to see and the father needs some help, or the father's out to see the mother needs some help and they need some guidance, and they'll use me as, I'm going to tell Master Doc, you say you're not going to clean your room. get me on the phone. I said, young man, what's your problem? Oh, nothing, sir. I said, well, your mother said you need to clean your room. I said, now I'm going to call back in an hour. That room better be clean. I called back. Master Doc, I don't know what you told him, but he went right to it and cleaned his room. So I'm changing lives just like my life was changed. So that's why I teach martial arts. I just love what I do.
And throughout the years, you know me, not only have I been talking about motivation and how to do things, you know, I was fortunate enough to follow through. I think the thing with what you had to do to learn what you learned in martial arts was follow through.
Yes.
People get stuck and then they start to go back, and to break through, it's not easy, but it's very necessary. Otherwise, you would have never made it to black belt. You would have said, well, brown's close enough.
Yes. You know? And I've had students that did that. They get the brown belt in there. I'm like, wait a minute, you're like 6 months from making black belt and you want to quit? But I want to do something else. I'm like, okay. Some people are not meant to be black belts. Some people are just meant, like the military. Some people are not meant to be sergeants. Some people are not meant to be generals. They just want to be in the lineup. So, you know,
yeah. So
it is what it is.
Well, that's just being adult about it. And when you're adult about it, you say, you know what? Let's keep it real. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they won't. You know, some will. Some won't. So why? I'm gonna still keep doing it.
Right. Who's next?
Yeah. So that whole concept also comes from, of course, as you know, I've been a direct sales guy for years, so I've always thought about that too. But to me, how can I not let people know that things can help them? Like I can't.
Right.
If someone says to me, "Oh, you know, I'm 60 years old. Should I train in martial arts?" Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 70 years old. Should I? Yeah. Now
never
have
too old to start.
You might have to do it differently, but absolutely,
right.
Yeah. If someone said to me, well, if I could just do martial arts 1 year, I said, well, so if you knew that you were going to die this year, do the martial arts the year you're going to die, and you might not die. I think it saves your life. I think it saves your life. You know, to have the desire to move, the desire to have a goal, like to get the split, you know, that desire, you know, from the Father, you know, from above, desire, you know. So realistically, without that desire, that enthusiasm, that passion, which is difficult during these times, guys. I mean, how difficult was it for you, like you just mentioned, to even keep this school open right now?
Oh man, look, it's like, you know, you got to have all your bases covered. What I mean by that, I'm talking about my bills. You got your telephone bill. You got your light bill, the power bill. You got your insurance, and you got your marketing. Marketing is the biggest weak point for me. As far as, you know, putting my name. Like I said, you told me when you say you do the interview to help you with your people knowing you out there. You know, and I'm kind of reluctant when it comes to the Facebook marketing. Again, you've been on me about that. You tried to teach me some of that stuff, but my mindset. I'd rather get pay somebody to do it for me. And again, Jerry, and when I don't have the money to do it, then so I'm still stuck in the same spot. But to be able to run a martial arts studio this time with the covert thing going on, I think that I'm blessed because I got all my bills paid. I'm not making a lot of money for myself to pay myself, but we're gonna push through it. You know, it's
that's friends benefits, like you mentioned. I saw a photo just the other day where you had 5 white belts in a morning class, and you was ecstatic about that.
Yes, 5 people. As a matter of fact, I had 5 this morning as well. But you know, and for a long time when I first opened my school, I only had evening classes, and I was saying to myself, man, I wish I could have me some morning classes. Now I have morning classes and evening classes. I don't have a whole bunch of students, but I got a good core group that's committed because they want to see the school stay open. I say, if y'all gonna come, you know, I have these classes if y'all gonna show up. So therefore, it takes me away from having to do a second job. You know, most martial arts school owners have, you know, their second and third jobs, you know. So sometimes I have a mobile car detailing service. Sometimes I might get a client that need me to detail their car, and I go out and, like Master Miyagi, wax on, wax off. But that's not as often as I used to have to do it because I got all my bases covered on this end. The studio is paying for itself, you know.
Well,
So
again, you know how I roll when it comes to business, because to me, profit margins are the most important thing. Because realistically,
right,
martial arts business or any business is based on numbers. You know, business is
yes,
numbers, and the numbers have to be on the positive side as opposed to the negative side. And a lot of times, artists don't get a chance to wrap their brains around that. You know, like I don't
right,
have to tell you, I started a new endeavor 6 months ago, and I went all in. But the reason why I
yes,
went
sir.
all in was because I'm saying I need to earn substantial amount of income to live the lifestyle that I choose to by having 5 children and 2 grandchildren so far.
Right.
And I want to make sure I lead by example, provide for them. What else can I do this with? I mean, with the numbers that I showed you, what I've done with this little so-called side hustle, what else can I do that with? Legally.
Exactly. Look, your side hustle is actually the main hustle. You know, it's like you say, you're making money while you sleep.
And I never did that before. And so my mission and my goal is still to this very day, guys, by January 10th, which I'll be 55 years young, because people say I'm looking younger. That's the thing that's crazy about it, because you saw me struggling. You
Right.
saw me, as a matter of fact, forget about you still me struggling. You jumped on my case worse than ever one time when you saw me. Let's talk about that for a second.
Cause I love you. You know, and you and I, like I said, we've been buddies since day one, since we first started talking. We just hit it off, and at one point you was going through some stuff, I was going through some stuff, and you weren't sleeping. And he's like, "Yo, man, I only had an hour and a half. I only had 2 hours worth of sleep." I'm like, "You can't live like that. You're gonna end up, burning yourself out. You're gonna end up having a heart attack. What do you call it? Stress with that thing you talk about.
Yes, true.
That's yeah, oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress was all over him. I was a whole body of oxidative stress. You got
Right,
toxic man, I was oxidative man.
and you was competing in the tournament, and you was a little overweight. And I'm like, Jared, what are you doing? And I got on your case, and you would call me 4 o'clock in the morning, and I pick up the phone, and I said, what's going on, brother? And then you talk, and I listen, and then sometime I would call you 4 o'clock in the morning, and you talk, and I talk, and you listen. So it's just like, it's a brotherhood. It's like we was going through some of the. I was like, well, man, I'm going through this. You're like, yeah, me too. And I'm going through twice as much because I got twice as many. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, that's to give people perspective that everybody, people right now watching this, you're going through it, guys. Do not give up. Do not give up. You get through the other side. And then when you get beat up a little bit here and there, then you know what not to do. You know how to slip and dip. You don't block with your face.
Exactly.
And if for some reason you get an injury from it, it reminds you what not to do. And that's the thing that I respect about you. You've been resilient,
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome, but this is what it takes. But at the same time, so many of our friends have given up.
Yep.
I haven't given up on them. I don't get a chance to go around as often as I like nowadays because I am freaking, people get confused. They don't know where I'm at. Where are you now?
Right.
I do quite a bit of travel. But I said that was one of my dreams and goals. I wanted to be able to go wherever I wanted to go.
Right.
Anytime, to do whatever I want with anybody. So that's the part. So I got people reaching out to me all the time. Like right now, I got a gentleman here that I'll speak to soon. But when it comes down to it, all I'm saying is that I appreciate you, Quadranim, Jack, Doc, because you.
I appreciate you too, sir.
And I know the feeling is mutual. One thing that I'm going to ask you to do again, please, for me, I want you to go over the ABCs of martial arts via video again. Start that on Monday. On Monday, please, because that right there is a reminder to us that A, attitude, B, basis, C, control, D, discipline, E, energy, F, focus, G, gratitude, H, humility, I, integrity, J, justice, K, kindness, L, loyalty, M, motivation, N, ability, O, optimism, P, perseverance, Q, quality, R, respect, X, success, C, tolerance, U, unity, V, value, W, wisdom, X, exciting, Y, yes, Z, zenith. What zenith? The tippy top with P, perseverance, and you don't stop. Why? That to me, when you was doing those videos, I was like, yes, because I've told quite a few people.
Right. I was out there running up and down the side of it. We got a park out here called Mount Trashmore that was built from garbage, and they built it and changed it to a park. So I was running up the steps, 72 steps up and 72 down, and I would run up to the top and say, the day A for attitude. You gotta have the right attitude in order to have. You gotta have a good attitude to have a good altitude. Your attitude would determine what your altitude is. And then, you know, like every week I would do one, you know, to keep it out there. And as a matter of fact, I had quite a few people that was like, "Oh, thank you for that. I needed to hear that today." You know, you never know how you're going to affect somebody. You might say one thing that might affect them that change the rest of their life. One thing. So, you know, we do what we do. We live martial arts. It's a lifestyle. It's not something that we do for 6 weeks and the season is over.
And listen, and that's the thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the next cycle of A through Z, because I came up with other words too. So maybe I'll make it a little. But I strongly believe that through us, the Creator does wonderful magic. So keeping ourselves, I don't like to use the word humble, and I'll tell you why. When they used to say humble to us, it was almost like beating us down. Like, be humble. Right. Like, what the hell? I was thinking, what are you talking about? You know, and that came from being part of you know, Taekwondo. Tangsu actually was Grandmaster. Grandmaster Tiger Kim. But I just like to keep it real. You know, when people say humble, I say keep it real. All of us have strengths and weaknesses, guys. We all do. And we all go through days that we think we can't take it no more. And we've all been through days where we close our own school and nobody knows the pain when that last student left that we're going through.
Right.
And we have to go home and deal with a whole bunch of other issues.
Right.
And identity gets eradicated, and our confidence starts to get stripped, and then we have an injury, and then you start seeing the clock ticking. You start to get old, and then you see maybe a little belly, and like, wait a second, this is not the person that I wanted to be. And you start going through some stuff. And so that's why, to me, I challenge anybody. Tell me, how do you expect, or how can you have the outside perform without taking care of the inside?
Exactly.
I mean, can that really honestly happen? Not at the high level, right? So that's why I'm really big on children. I think child obesity is running rampant, especially with this COVID. I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but the majority of the reason why children themselves get bullied quite often, 90% of the time, is because of their self-esteem. Then when I attach the self-esteem to why they're being bullied, is because they're some type of either overweight or undernourished, one or the other. Has that been the experience throughout the years that you've been teaching?
Yes, sir. Exactly. Self-confidence, they come in, they have low self-esteem because they're overweight. They get bullied at school because they're overweight. They get picked on because the mama can't afford to buy the Jordans. You know what I'm saying? Then they don't want to fight back. And they don't want, I'm not saying literally fight back, but they don't even want to just stand up for themselves. So my objective is to change their attitude. A for attitude. If I can get you to believe in yourself, if I can get you to focus, then you can have discipline. Discipline will lead to confidence. Confidence will lead to self-respect. And then when you respect yourself, others will see that. And then you can respect other people around you. But until you get self-respect, you ain't going to respect nobody else.
Well,
it all works together.
That's the interesting part. And guys, those of you who are watching, please understand what I'm trying to do is share. There's a difference between discipline and self-discipline. There's a difference between confidence and self-confidence. When you bow, you show respect. How you bow, showing self-respect.
Right.
And the way you carry yourself, you tell the world, I'm royalty or I'm rubbish.
Yep.
You decide. I agree. And that's the whole thing about it. That I know, listen, a lot of people, I've asked the question, I posed the question with a photo like this. Or maybe it was like this. And the question was, what are the 3 things that reminds you of me? Or what 3 things do you think of when you see me? And a lot of people said a whole bunch of, things that are opposite for each other. And I know that I've always been, in person, I'm comical.
Right.
I gotta laugh, man. Life is too freaking short. How many times have we not laughed?
Right.
I go there, snap on everybody, right? And I say those things that you like, damn, I can't believe he said that.
Right.
And they don't take it personal because I'm not trying to make fun of them. I'm having fun with them.
Exactly.
But if somebody sees that doesn't know, what they're going to say, man, that guy's an a-hole because he was making fun of my instructor. I can't believe that. And they're like, bro, they've been friends for 35 plus years. They're not friends no more. That's family. People
Look,
have no idea. Yeah.
when I first saw you compete, you was like on the sideline just talking trash, and then when you got out there, you went into your zone and you did this thing. I'm like, who is this guy? I mean, you like talking trash the whole time, and then you went out there and kicked people in the head and won. I was like, and then when won the grand champion, like, oh, I guess what's his name? Jared Fontanez. I gotta watch this guy. Cause look, you the only person to talk more than I do. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you can talk, man.
I think the most impressive part for me and you in relationship is not so much the talking, that you actually listen.
Yeah.
Because you don't listen to too many people.
Yeah.
And that's because you're the oldest. You're the oldest.
But look, you know what? It's like it's when you show me the video of you speaking at EFC. Like I said, I knew who you were at that point, you know, and then you spoke at EFC.
Yeah, but you knew Fasty. You knew the Fasty character that competed in the tournaments.
Right. And then, like I said, that was a fast fit. Then when you got and spoke in front of the EFC, I'm like, damn, this guy know his stuff. And then you call me and start sharing this information and putting stuff in my head and sharing this information. I'm like, I can't take it all in. You was overloading my marketing mind. I mean, because you kept giving me stuff and telling me what to do and doing this and calling me, what are you doing? Where your numbers out? What are you doing? What's going on? How many students you got now? I'm like, God dang. But I appreciate everything that you told me, because I, you know, like I said, I might not have worked out 100% the way you told me to work it out, because I didn't follow the formula 100%. Because if you change the formula, you're going to change the outcome. If you stick to the formula, a proven formula, it's going to work. So, like I said, if I stick to the formula that you gave me, I'd have got 100% out. But like I was like, well, I'll try this, and I might get like 70% out.
Yeah, but you still move closer towards the direction you wanted to. See, that really comes down to everybody. We have what separates us from other creatures, so to speak, is free will. It's the only thing.
Free will.
That's the only thing. And that's your prerogative.
Yes, sir.
And it's my prerogative to share the information. Now, mind you, did I ever send you a bill? Did I ever try to put you on a consult? Did I ever put you on? Now, mind, guys, to be honest with you, I have given more information to people who didn't pay me a red cent for it than the people who were paying me $500 a month to speak to me once a week over the phone for 1 hour.
Right.
And I had, you know, without shouting anybody out, you guys know who you are. I have a lot of people that were hired me formally to mentor them behind the scenes, whether it was marketing or merchandising, or people couldn't understand, why is it that you have, I mean, there was a time I had 1,000 students. How can you have 1,000 students saying, well, first and foremost, that's nothing. What do you mean that's nothing?
Right.
I said, there's millions in New York alone, millions. What the heck's 1,000? Freaking, you know, and I had schools in Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan, everywhere except Staten. And I was like, you know what? My vision and my dream was really to impact the world, because this thing saved my life. And I'm saying, if it saved my life, it can save other people's lives. Because it wasn't just me doing this. My students, no joke, my students were some of the baddest freaking fighters of all time. Yes, they would do things I was like, damn, I'm glad they're on my side, you know, because. But I do remember the day they came in with no confidence and low self-esteem and second guessing.
Exactly.
But I can see it in the future.
When you see them change, man, you kind of like beam and go, yeah, man, and I changed that person's life. Not that you're looking for credit. It's just that you had a hand in giving them the right confidence so they could succeed in life.
Right.
Because I've seen some people, man, you would go, dang on, this kid. My very first student that I signed up from white belt and took him the first degree black belt. He called me from time to time now. He's a grown man, and he said, Master Doc, thanks for being so tough on me. He was a product of a single mom, single parent. He's now a doctor of psychology. He lives in San Diego. He's a doctor because I stayed on his case. I changed his life. And he was like, Master Doc, thanks for changing my life. He called me out of left field sometime, just say, I just want to thank you. I'm like, you're welcome. I said, but that's what I do.
Well,
So,
and again, I was looking at the Facebook group because normally what happens is I try to respond to people because we're live on Facebook
right.
at the same time as recording. And that's another thing too.
Okay.
People say to me quite often, man, why you keep doing these videos for free and so on and so forth?
Pollo empanizado o pechuguitas de pollo medio secas con medio. Y pasta con queso o salsa.
Salsa.
Salsa, ok.
Gracias.
Bueno. Empanizado o
Empanizado, por favor, sí.
Las pechuguitas como empanizadas
Sí.
o volteaditas.
Empanizado.
Empanizadas.
Sí, gracias. So this is so relationships is what happens, right? So this lady's a nanny. She's been a nanny for 11 years. And the challenge that we're having is literally that she was intimidated by my presence for some reason. I cleaned the house before she got here. She thinks I'm trying to get, she thinks I'm trying to, but bottom line is that sometimes it's miscommunication. Now, I didn't treat her any different, you know?
Right.
I didn't treat her any different. So she turned around and came around. So she's been compelled to come. Now she's trying to cook for me.
Right.
The point still is that we have miscommunications with people and we don't get a chance to communicate. And we escalate the situation worse based on how we communicate. I could have easily had an all-out draw with this lady, you know, but she saw that I kept my focus. I mean, we were doing the show and she was doing some work.
Right.
Some of it was unnecessary. You're dealing with people all the time. And your advice to me was keep your focus. Don't let that, let's talk about that for a second. When you're trying to do the right thing, and then outside sources don't want that to happen.
That's right. Hey, the law of inertia. Every object in motion will stay in motion till some outside force stops it. Don't let the outside force stop you. If you're in motion, stay in motion. The law of inertia. It's a scientific law. Any object in motion will stay in motion till some outside force stops it. The outside force is usually a negative person that's going to come in and try to mess up your game. So you got to keep it moving. You're right. Stay focused.
You just became a scientist right now. I believe that we really are. I mean, when I explained to you the way I stretch, wasn't that different from what you have seen?
Yes.
I've done seminars worldwide, and I've had people do splits, and I never did splits in my life. I never touched them. There was two things that I did. Two things. One, in their mind's eye, you begin with the end in mind. The day I became a white belt, I was a black belt. They just didn't give it to me. That was my attitude, you know?
Right.
I don't get a black. Only because that, unlike you, I wasn't pushed towards it. It was inside of me. I mean, I have a photo that I'm like this. I don't know if I was doing salsa or I was doing karate, but I just know I was 4 years old, and that photo to me is a wow photo. You know, I've been one of the luckiest people in the entire world when I get a chance to know good people. And I think the word good people back in the days really meant a lot more. But I think, you know, I know that Quadrant Jack Dog is good people.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I try to be.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, the intention, right? Power of intention.
I've been called some things.
Yeah, worse than that. Yeah, right. And we laugh at it because thank you for the attention, right? You know, it's like, thank you for noticing, you know? So it's like, yeah, and that's the whole thing. We spent some time together over in Atlanta. And during that time, you wasn't even competing. But you still went down.
Right. You know what? That was my first time going to the Battle of Atlanta. It was the 50th anniversary. I said, well, you know, I'm going to have to make this one. So I went down and I couldn't compete because, you know, I got hip cartilage messed up. So that was my reason why I couldn't compete. And I still can't kick right now, but I'm you know.
Yeah, but you still went, and there was we had a chance to interact a few times, right?
Right.
Most people don't think I'm the way I am because they see the character acting the fool and entertaining. And that's okay. What would people be surprised about you?
That I actually would cry. I cry sometimes. I just break down and start crying. I miss my mama. You know what I'm saying? And when my son was born, I cried. When my daughter was born, I cried. You know what I'm saying? And then and when my mama passed away, I cried. And then sometimes I just break down and cry. My wife said, "What you crying for?" I said, "I'm just grateful, because I'm grateful for what God has given me thus far. Might not be living in the best house in the neighborhood, but I ain't living in the worst house in the neighborhood. Might not be driving the best car, but I'm not walking. You see, the man in the wheelchair just wish he could walk. The man that's walking just wish he could ride a bike. The man that's riding the bike wish he could catch the bus. The man who riding the bus wish he had a car. The man who got a car wish he had a limousine. The man who got a limousine wish he had an airplane. Everybody always wants something else, no matter what your case. But I'm just grateful for what God gave me. And
Yeah,
I'll cry in a minute.
right. And all those people on their dying days, all they want is another day.
Exactly. Exactly.
Another, can I have some more time?
Exactly. And that's what God, you know, like I tell my students like this, when they come in here and they feel kind of halfway, I said, there's two things going on here. You wasting your mama's money and you wasting my time. More importantly, my time. I can get some more money. I can't get no more time. Once the big man upstairs called me to say, come on, I got to go. I can't get no more time. You're right.
That's a resource that people just don't realize. So that's why I try to leverage time, because that's what the successful people have done. Leverage time really means when you get a quality of a strategy, it saves you time, money, and effort, because someone who's been there, done that, the mentorship is the key. When
Yes,
the
sir.
blind, you know, in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is king. You know, and that's what happens a lot of times. People walking around with cyclopses, they don't even realize that there's people with peripheral vision. And there's people who've been there, done that. You know, people's ego, really, which is an acronym for edging God out, their ego doesn't let them just shut the hell up and just follow the lead. If they follow the lead, they will hit what would be similar results, if not better. But it comes down to one thing that I realized it happened in my life. And you told me if this was the case for you. I did not think I deserved it.
Right.
Have you ever had a problem with that? Because I think you deserve a lot more, personally. And that's why you've heard me say for years. That's why I share the information. Do you think you deserve? And then the deserving part would come up for something stupid. It could be all because my mother, my brother, my sister, my cousin, I stubbed my nose when I was 2 years old and whatever. I think you deserve more, because the creator gives us everything we want. But that desire to want more, like I want to help more people. 1,000 wasn't enough. And even though it's progressional, but I didn't have the resource, I didn't have the tools to do it. So far, to know that I'm helping people in 4 countries, but there's 26 that this particular company is involved in. Helping people stay alive. Is there a possibility that maybe you can expand what would be your life expectancy? Because biblically, I remember they lived for a few hundreds of years.
Right.
What was the difference? What could have been the difference? You think maybe it was something they were eating? Maybe it's something that they were doing physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally? If there was a possibility to expand life expectancy, like I said, it could be exercise, but it starts off with a mental exercise first. So let's finish off on that note.
People nowadays, they don't exercise. Literally, I mean, you get a lot of people that's doing the exercise, but I'm saying exercise as far as back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, people actually had to get out and actually work, do physical work, you know, through factories. I mean, they was lifting stuff, and they was like pushing lawnmowers instead of driving the lawnmowers. And then they had to plow the fields. They literally standing behind a horse and a mule, and they walking and plowing fields. Now everybody, they press the button and the machine and do it. And then so I work 8 hours a day. All they doing is pressing the button. So it's like, and then you got the self-conscious people, the health-conscious people like ourselves, who you know, doing cardio classes and fitness kickboxing classes and taekwondo and karate classes and judo and martial art classes and lifting weights. I mean, everybody, you got that group of people, but the majority back in the early 30s, 40s, 50s, and even into the 60s, people actually had to do physical work, which meant they got to work out. I mean, if you're a garbage man, they had to pick up the garbage cans and they had to sling them garbage cans for 8 hours. When then they got a truck to come up and pick the can up and dump it in, and they put it down. So people, they don't work out as much, and then again on the back end, they start adding these stuff into food where the food is not pure anymore. Whereas, you know, back in the old days, I mean, you got to go dig in the field to get a potato to make a French fry, but now you go to McDonald's and get a French fry and it's got trans fats and all that other stuff in it. Well, you know, so the food is different, so the vitamin intake is different. So if you looking back at the diet of the earlier days, and I was born in '58, so '60s and '70s. My mama actually cooked collard greens. You know what I'm saying? She actually cooked cabbage and corn. Now you get stuff that's processed. You don't know what you're getting. You read on the can, some of the stuff you can't even pronounce. You know? So
everything you said there is correct, except for one thing I would have to probably
great. Straighten me up, brother. Straighten me up.
Well, it wasn't diet, it was lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle.
See,
okay.
Because diets are limited to a certain time, and it feels like you're dying, hungry, or you're gonna kill somebody.
Right,
Someone else is gonna die, because the word diet has the word die in it. So people psychologically know that it's gonna be something they're gonna deplete themselves. They're gonna lose, and what's the ultimate? Your actual life. When in reality, lifestyle, regardless of what you're consuming in terms of food, but is it food? If it's processed and it's 51% something else, as Michael John White said,
right?
French fry is supposed to be biodegradable, but it looks the same 10 years after. So maybe it's not food. How crazy is that?
And look, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm guilty. I eat that garbage from time to time. I mean, I eat it, but
it's convenient.
Look, I'm right next door is a Pizza Hut. So I'm like, I'll try to go in and get something healthy. I ain't found nothing on the menu healthy yet.
But this is the whole thing. Again, it goes back to, I've even asked a lot of people, and I get it. Trust me, I get it, because Pizza Hut, you get a flat, thin pizza from Pizza Hut, and then and you put multiple vegetables to feel better about yourself.
Right.
And when you eat that, it's so thin, and you feel like, this is the best of what would be the worst.
Right. The best of the worst. Exactly.
The best of the worst. So out of convenience, we understand that people do things. I get it. And plus taste, they get used to the taste. But I've told you, and I've told a lot of people, this is a hint. If you eat something and you get the itis afterwards, that means that food did not have what's considered vibrational energy, which is a pH count. It's a low pH count on the acid end. So based on that, you have an addiction to what would be the acid, and it puts you to sleep. Why do we go to sleep? Why do we go to sleep after we eat these things? Take a wild guess. What would you say?
It said when you're hungry, you're crazy. When you're full, you're lazy. It's the chemicals that's putting you to sleep.
That's why detoxing your cells from the chemicals is a must. That's why I look young. I look younger now, don't I?
Yes, sir.
I'm back to like the 1990s, but I feel like the 1980s, and I'm not injured anymore. When I was training 3 times a day, you saw me. I was fat. I was a fat boy. I put videos, Fat Feet Fontanez, F-A-T Feet Fontanez, making fun of myself. And I'm dancing. What do you remember?
I remember. Look, I remember you having on your rec suit and then having the top out instead of having the top tucked in. And I said, and then you pull your shirt up and you said, "Look at this right here." I was like, "Go ahead, man." And you got rid of it. You start drinking that BEA beer. The beer, and then you're doing your break dancing with you're doing your break dancing with your guy in the hallway.
Oh, you saw it.
Hey, y'all was out on the beach doing it. I'm like, yeah, he getting it down. Because see, you got to remember, a lot of people don't look at dancing as exercise because they're having so much fun doing it. But even when you're doing your dancing, you working your muscles, even if it's just a little bit. And then on top of that, then you had the other guy with the dreads. What's your student name with the dreads? So you were working out with him in the hallway?
Master Ty. Not my student, but
that guy.
He is part of what would be the sniper fighter curriculum. So when it comes to that, yes.
Right. So and now.
Oh,
now
no. I apologize. That is my student. You talk about oh my, how can I go blank his name? Yeah, with the long braids. Right.
Yeah, you say he lived like an hour away and he had to catch the train.
Yes.
Yeah, so like I say, and y'all got y'all workout on, and meanwhile I'm sitting back and I'm watching him like, okay, all right, I see this technique right here, and then you start talking about footwork, and what I find with your footwork is very impressive. I was watching Michael Jai do a video with another friend of his the other night. It was an older video from like October, I think. Some kickboxing MMA guy that was at his place training. He was talking about footwork, and then you were talking about
that's John Jones, man. You don't watch MMA, do you?
I don't know. No,
that's John Jones, the greatest of all time.
Was that the white guy? Middleweight?
No, I apologize because it's the wrong video. Because he actually he did some sparring with John Jones also, who's John Bones Jones, who's probably the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And John was saying how he beat him. So anyway, I got to check out that video.
And then I watched him talk about his footwork, and then I watch you talk about your footwork, and then I saw Jai Detention do some footwork the other night. So I'm watching the footwork, and even talking with Grandmaster Cheeks, he was always saying your footwork will get you into the situation and get you out of the situation. So the footwork is very important, even though, you might be able to throw the double roundhouse kicks, the hook round, and side kicks, ass kick. But if you don't get the footwork to get you in the position to drop them things or to get out away from things, your footwork got to be on point. So I was watching you when you was sparring with the guy in the hallway, and I was watching your footwork. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, he's shifting and moving and pulling the back foot out, cutting the angle. So, the footwork is very important. Watching what you was doing.
I teach white belts footwork first. That's the first thing. Now, it's a little early here, but check that out. We're going to have to do a transition. So literally, as we're doing this video, this gentleman is a little early, or she's a little early. How you doing, man? That's Mrs. But I think she's probably setting it up for Grandmaster Dennis Brown himself. So we're going to end this one over here. And then at 12 o'clock, we actually have what would be, so she's setting it up for him. This is awesome. This is, how you doing, ma'am? All right. Hey, listen, so let's think about this for a second, right? Most people think on time is at the time, but professionals know that on time is a half hour or it's before time. And this is incredible, huh? I mean, I got Quadrilim Jack Dark over here. I didn't expect this lovely lady to be here, but I'm really honored because this show, and by the way, I'm gonna change the background so you can see what I've done. I think hopefully, behind every good man is a strong woman, I've heard. So hopefully she approves of this, because this is something that and I made sure
Hey, Miss Brown.
Hey, how are you?
It's nice to see you. Always a pleasure.
You too, sir. You too.
Amen.
So do you approve? Is that okay? Yeah, because hey, guys, for whatever it's worth, branding is the key. You gotta make sure that people see your situation. It's interesting because one of the things that a lot of people may not know about me personally, and Quadrilim Jack Dark knows, is that for years I've been doing marketing. And would you believe it or not, there was a time where I was doing some marketing for the Browns themselves.
That's right.
A lot of people just don't know, because I had to reinvent myself. The world has changed, guys, and I've been talking about what would be virtual classes only for about 9 years, because the truth of the matter is that the communication tool changes all the time. Otherwise, we would have been watching some VHS tape of this, and or if you was lucky enough to have an 8mm camera, those things.
Right.
But regardless, the quality of the information has always been phenomenal. But the way people disperse it, when it comes down to it, All this is over here, and I've shown people before, it's a screen, but the screen's a sheet of fabric that costs $4. And then I can change the background to whatever I want, be anywhere in the world. And at the same time, you know, there's so many martial arts instructors or professionals in general that are still intimidated by a camera. And to me, I'm like, wait a second. It's insane for me to think about that. So, Quadrilim Jack,
Yes, sir.
our way out. So what are your last, first of all, would you come back and visit us in the future?
Yes, sir. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Well,
Just let me know when.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, because when it comes down to it, again, today we shared some information, guys, that you may not have known. Yes, the gentleman and I have been friends since the 1980s. And yes, we've talked as early as, what would be early, you and I, or late?
4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, that's late.
Yeah.
That's late. You call me and we just start talking.
Yeah,
till
because
the sunrise.
And about life. Because life sometimes gets really heavy on people. And how many of our friends right now are going through the point where they can't breathe, they can't even think, their life is being eradicated. It breaks my heart for me to think that probably the #1 job that will be in dire need is a therapist.
Amen.
And we as martial arts instructors always have been therapists. We may not get the therapist fee. However, we absolutely have been those people in position to be able to influence people on a level that just most people can. And I appreciate you, Quadrilim Jack Talk. So on that note, I'm going to let you leave, sir, because I know you're probably going to go to
yes, sir.
Get that Thin Peaks I just probably promoted for
yeah, right next door. I smell it. It's lunchtime.
Oh my God. Well, I would almost beg you to not do that and go home and make a salad, man. So like that, you have some life cells into your system, because I know
I go make a salad because I got to go out and rake some leaves. I got a backyard full of leaves waiting on me.
That's the exercise again, right? How in the past, the exercise, just lifestyle itself was you being able to physically do things. Hey,
yes, sir.
Last thing I'm going to say, you know how hard it is to paint a ceiling with a paintbrush to get those corners? Oh my God, your shoulders hurt like crazy. So those people are strong based on their work. All right, sir.
Lifestyle.
God bless you. Hey, without further, when I say, well, you know what to do.
Yeah.
When I say AB, man, you know what to say. AB.
See ya.
We out here.
To them, baby. VA. Peace.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. Peace.
All right. Oh boy, this has been incredible. So,
Jerry, I'm going to finish setting up.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I'm going to put this on pause. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Shaolin, we talk about, listen, this gentleman here, as a little kid, I went to 42nd Street to Kung Fu movies, and he was actually in the movie. And then I opened up a magazine, and there was this guy with a rope dart saying, well, no, he's trying to kill himself. What is this stuff? The rope dart was crazy. And he was ranked and rated. And then years after, I seen this demo team, and they were doing some crazy stuff. Boom, bang, bang, boom, bang. But realistically, for some reason, this gentleman has always found himself to fall onto the top of the realm when it comes to martial arts. He's a leader of leaders, a master of masters, and he's always been so kind to me as a crazy teenager all the way to whatever I am now. I'm not sure what we're going to call him, but we will call him the legendary Grandmaster, Professor, Mafundi, and whatever other title that he's deserved. Dennis Brown. How you doing, sir?
How you doing there, brother? You know, I've been with this journey watching you a long time, so I'm just honored to be here talking with the talker.
Oh, man. And as another thing, too, he's always been the guy, too, that they give the mic to, so that's interesting, right? So he's calling me the talker, but which is true. I've always tried to share information that have substance, and I think a lot of people just do not know how many great individuals are walking amongst us. And it breaks my heart when I go to events sometimes that people just walk right by and like, are you kidding me? These people are giants. They're freaking superheroes to me, because martial arts is the reason why I'm still here. So, sir, let me just ask you, what was the inspiration, desperation, and motivation to even start the martial arts? Oh my gosh!
Let me tell you something, man. the reality is that if it wasn't for people like you, our history would be slipping away from us, because you're literally a walk-in history book for us. I don't know. I was telling my wife, I said, I hope I can remember everything about my career, but don't worry, if I don't, Jerry will. I mean, and you could probably do that for half of the martial artists in the country.
I'm a fan. So
Yeah.
let's think about this. 99.9% of the time, we're spectating. We're not participating. We're participating as a spectator. So to me, that's why, as a competitor, I perform for the spectators.
Yeah.
Because as a little kid, the other day I had a chance to interview, of all people, Robert Sugar Crossan, which a lot of people, for the first time, saw him at your events.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, is that a person that's he's a superhero to me.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know, Sugar was always the man. And there was a reason they called him Sugar, because he just always delivered. He came out. He did it so sweet. And I can remember coming to New York, as you know, way back in the '70s, and seeing him for the first time. I was competing against him, and he was Sugar Crossan, and you had Little K.A., the eighth wonder of the world, you know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I remember thinking, when I came to New York, I had to establish myself fairly well in the local area, the Mid-Atlantic area. But all of a sudden I hit New York, and I'm coming up going, my name's Dennis Brown, let me do my form. And I realized I was out of my league, because Little K would come out, something is something, and ladies and gentlemen of the martial arts, I am, you know, Little K.A., the eighth wonder of the world. And then Sugar, first time I competed against him, you mentioned Sugar, I'm standing there waiting to go on. They call Sugar Crossan. He's sitting in the stands behind the judges. And they called him, he let them call him 3 times. And all of a sudden, people won't believe this. I don't know if he can get away with it today. He ran down from the things, jumped over the judges from behind, rolled out, and said, Sugar Crossan. And I went, oh my God, you got to have a show to even introduce yourself here. So yeah, those are interesting days.
It's interesting, because the first time I saw him was 1976. You know, I was a student of Supreme Grandmaster Sang Soo Tiger Kim, who, guys, I'm a little biased, because I say this, I'm going to ask you, if there was 3 people standing side by side, Bruce Lee, Jack LaLanne, and Tiger Kim, who had the better body?
You know it is Tiger Kim.
How in God's name?
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God. So having that man as a role model, you know, I have actually 8mm tape that was converted to video of him swimming in 1975 in the winter and jogging in the snow. That's why, I don't know if you guys saw me last year, I was doing a lot of Wim Hof method where I was in shirt with no shirt out all around the Bronx, you know, because of paying homage to these people who knew things that we didn't know. So again, but you literally was a person who, you're a Renaissance man. You reinvented yourself a whole bunch of times. But going back to, what was the inspiration? Now you're from the Washington, D.C. area. What started you in martial arts? What year was it?
Well, you know, it's crazy. I started actually in 1964. I was kind of messing around. I just gotten into Howard University. And there's actually, people don't know this, there was Dr. Young at teaching Taekwondo there at the time. And I was living at the dorm, and I didn't know much about martial arts, but I went over there. But he was teaching, no, he was a Taekwondo guy, which we know him for, but he was teaching a judo class. So believe it or not, probably my very first ever class at that time was judo. I went in there and I saw him, and all I remember, I only took 2 classes with him, because there were guys running at him, and then he was on one knee, and he'd be throwing them, and he broke somebody's leg. And I remember going back to the dorm and said, okay, that's for me. That's the end for me. I didn't go back to that class anymore, but I always stayed in touch with him and his students. But actually across the street from Howard, there was a little place called Banneker Middle School. And I heard there's a bunch of guys in a basement, a little teeny basement down there teaching, doing some martial arts. Jerry, you appreciate this. I slid in the door, kind of just stood there, didn't know whether I could go in or not. It was about 5 or 6 guys in there. The guy we call Joe Colvin, we called him Kung Fu Joe. And then there was Spanish Joe. And then there was Jimmy Yee. And there was all these different kind of little guys there doing something they called Chuan Fa. we weren't calling it Kung Fu then. This was before Kung Fu. It hadn't even hit the movies. But I realized it was a Chinese thing. And I went in there, and at the end of every class, not to get in the whole class, but at the end of every class, they would give, they had a belt that one guy had at that time, Jimmy Yee had it, and you got a chance to fight for the championship belt at the end of every class. Might want to re-implement that. And if you beat that person, you got the belt. Well, Jerry, you can imagine my first class in, the ego I had. I said, I'll try him. Now, I wish I could tell you it was something historical, but he whipped my butt from one end of the gym to the other end. And I realized, well, you know, this Chinese stuff is kind of nice. So I started training with them. We couldn't train in that gym very long. So we started training in a place called Meridian Park. It's called Malcolm X Park now. And every Saturday, we would get together in that park. I'd meet these guys up in this open park, no school, anything. And we would just practice this Chuan Fa. And Kung Fu Joe had studied actually with Ding Chen in DC, the only Kung Fu school that was in Chinatown. He had studied with Zhao Ga. And so he was teaching us some stuff and all like that. And I was trying to learn it. But we basically, that wasn't our training. I mean, our training was, after about a year of doing that, I was the only one with a car. And every Friday or Saturday early in the morning, I would put all of those guys in my little Volkswagen. Jerry, we would drive 4 or 5 hours, about 5 hours at that time, and we would go to Chinatown in New York. So it started in New York, and there was 5 theaters: the Sun Sing, the Canal. It was a number of them, all up and down there. But they all showed double features. We would run out and buy baozi, these white dough things that you eat in Chinatown, and we would spend the whole day running from one of those theaters to the other, watching double features. And when we got back to Malcolm X Park or Meridian Park at that time, that was our class, whatever we could get from the movies. So that was my first start. We were learning from the movies in New York.
That's incredible, and I'm sure that there's similarities worldwide, a derivative of that. Because what else was there? I mean, where else couldn't you find this? Remember, I mean, I'm only 54. Guys, I'm only 54. Some of you guys would think I'm in my 60s. I'm not in my 60s. It's crazy. I'm gonna digress for a second on purpose, because there's 2 people about 2 years ago said the same thing in the week to me, and one of them was Howard Chung, John's older brother, as you guys know, and the other one was the legendary fighter Jesse Thornton. They said, he said, you're a little older than me, right? I'm like, why? These guys are 10 years older than me, and I'm thinking I'm looking kind of good. They think I'm looking older than them. And I was trying to figure out, why was it that they thought I was older? One of them said, because you've been around forever.
That's what I was going to say, Jerry. It's because you've been around so long, they can't figure out anybody could be around and done all the things you've done and not be like in your late 60s.
and then the other thing they said was because one of them finally admitted, because he got your business together before we did.
Yeah. That's
but I was a father at 17, so what was I supposed to do? I had to take martial arts and make that my vocation.
Mm-hmm.
How else was I going to earn money? I needed to get into Karate Illustrated.
Yeah.
Because if I get into Karate Illustrated, I was going to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe someday become a full contact fighter and be on NBC, not ESPN, because we didn't have that in New York. We didn't have no ESPN.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so wow. So we're talking about mid-1960s, and then having to travel wherever the action was. And it so happens to be all the way in New York. You probably would have drove if you could, to San Francisco too, right?
We'd have driven anywhere we could go at the time. Of course, we were kind of poor because we were in the hood, So, and again, of all those 5 guys, I was the only one with a car. And if you can imagine us piling in there driving to New York. But and I hear people talk about 42nd Street. The truth is that I did spend very little time at the theater down on 42nd Street, because I understand is where Kung Fu movies are shown. Almost all of our stuff was in Chinatown, watching the stuff in Chinatown.
Well, Chinatown had it way before. But remember, Chinatown, just like in many Chinatowns, was very intimidating. Because we knew that they had a whole bunch of gangs there, flying this and dragging that.
Now, if I tell you that, I can't tell you the little small street, but Moat Street.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now that little thing, it looked real like you were back in China. And then some of the little side streets were even more narrow. And we would go up there because we were all Guilos. We were all, other than Jimmy, we were all Guilos. We were all foreigners. We would go up there. I used to wear a steel whip around my waist instead of a belt, walking through with my shirt over top of it, because we had seen too many Kung Fu movies. We're thinking if anybody jumps out after us, and it could happen back then, that, we were going to whip out my this and somebody was going to break out his double daggers. And we had a lot of fantasies going at that time, but, it kept us motivated back and forth up there, training and training and training. I didn't really get into formal training I did that for Kung Fu up until about 1968. And I had kind of had my feel I wanted to get into a formal system. So believe it or not, I started going down to Grandmaster Jun Ree's school, which is something else people don't know. He's a Kung Fu guy, but he did some judo. And I remember walking in his school, and we used to sit down outside in the lobby because he had the first professional school. You could sit in the lobby and look through the glass thing, and we'd be watching classes and watching classes. Finally, I decided that I was going to join his school. So I would have a formal training. Now I still continue to work out with my guys, but as guys, I want to get a belt. I want to get something. We're just kind of the vagabond warriors, so to speak, training in the park and all like that. And so people don't believe that I actually trained with Jun Ree back when all those guys, McDuffie was there, and all the old guys were just coming in to Jun Ree's at that time. But I trained with a lot of those guys. Jun Ree's son was there, and Mike was there. All those guys were there, but I was just this little guy lining up to take classes, and they were all like brown belts then. Yeah.
And that's one of those unknown secrets about you. And I found that out a few years ago. Like, wow. I mean, but it makes sense, guys, because now let me ask you a question. When I trained with Tiger Kim, they psyched me. Mm-hmm. Because in the ad in the yellow pages, they said karate, kung fu, but it was Korean karate. They called it Korean karate.
Yeah, yeah.
That word taekwondo, I didn't hear it until years after. Is that true?
We know the story of that. That's something putting the Kupsu Wong and all those systems came together, and all that became taekwondo. Yeah. So
when you first heard of Master Ang over there, did he name it taekwondo? What was he called? Was it either Jita Kwan or Tang Soo Do or Motor Kwan or something like that? I don't know.
Jun Ree's karate.
Oh no, but he was doing like see Grandmaster Ree, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Oh my God, if he wouldn't have been around, maybe a lot of people wouldn't be around either. in terms of martial arts.
Absolutely right. I mean, he was, well, the whole story of Nick Kokinas and him. I came in during that time when Nick Kokinas was still running a dance studio. I mean, he used to run
Arthur Murray Dance Studio.
Arthur Murray's Dance Studio. That's absolutely right. And Jun Ree was on Connecticut Avenue up on the second floor in a little smelly place, because nobody had big schools then. And you're not going to get in that long story because that's a whole nother hour. But he actually approached Nick Kokinas and said, look, you got all these small dance studios all over the place. And I was wondering, you don't use them all day and late in the evenings and what have you. Maybe I could come in with you. Again, I'm doing it on the fast track. Yeah. And maybe run schools out of that so I could have multiple schools through your schools. Well, that didn't work out, but he did hook up with Nick Kokinas, and they went on to form a partnership, which he helped him to open a number of schools. And I think he was one of the guys that helped him going on his feet early on. But that's why he ended up having the Jun Ree chain of schools that were run kind of like the Arthur Murray Dance Studios, the contracts, the introductory classes, all those things kind of came. So I was coming in right around that time, but at that time he only had that one school on 20th and L where all the big dogs trained. And so it wasn't strange for me. Years and years later at the Capitol Classics, you may have been there, not too many years ago, Jun Ree came up on the stage and gave me an honorary black belt in Taekwondo. And everybody went, what? How could Jun Ree? I said, no, guys, what y'all don't know is I did train with him a number of years. And I've always given him credit for being one of the guys that kind of got me started in 1968, because I didn't actually join my instructor's school until late 1970.
Wow.
So I was with June Reed for 2-3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, just to backtrack for a second, what was your major at Howard, and did you graduate?
No, you know what? I was a math major there, but I came from a really struggling family. You know, one mom with 3 sons, and her all in a 1-bedroom apartment. And my brothers, we were all. I had skipped a grade. I was the child genius. I had skipped, so I had caught up to the same class as my older brothers. So all 3 of us were within a thing of each other. We all came out, graduated from high school at the same time. I went to Howard for a short period of time. About a year or so, as I was working at the printing office for the government, a good government job, and finally realized we all weren't going to be able to do that. So I kind of dropped out and kind of helped raise money. My brother was over at Coppin State in Baltimore, and I went on to take a class in computer science. Believe it or not, I was a computer specialist way back in those days, 64, 65. And so I ended up having to leave because I had to get out of the house. There wasn't room for all of us in that 1-bedroom apartment. I ended up taking a job at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I was this child genius in computer science. And I worked for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for a number of years as a civilian working for the Air Force. I finally wanted to come back home after 2 years there. I transferred, like I'm talking like I'm really in the military, back to Topographic Command, which was the Army map service. And I was a computer specialist there for a number of years. And again, the child prodigy, because that's back when they were still using cards and big disc and what have you. And believe it or not, I had been there since 65, 66, and somewhere around 1970, I walked in at the height of my career and walked in and told them I'm quitting to teach Kung Fu, to teach Kung Fu for my instructor. They didn't even give me a going away party. Nobody believed me. I gave them my papers. I'm leaving. You're doing what? Remember in 1970, nobody really understood what Kung Fu was. Bruce hadn't jumped up and blown it up like that. The Shaw brothers had, but Bruce hadn't. So I ended up surprising all of them. I quit my good government job and went and started teaching, helping Master Lin run his school 1971. I had been in the school for 70. But I started running the school for him in 1971 and just never left.
Incredible, because it's true. The Kung Fu series hadn't started yet. Five Figures of Death hadn't become an international success as of yet. And of course, the Big Boss, or as we knew it, is Fist of Fury, didn't come around as of yet either. Snake and Eagle, Shadow, and all those things. With Jackie was around, kind of knew about him. And you know what's so interesting about that is that all those movies we used to watch in the 60s by the Shaw brothers, the top director for most of those movies, the 5 Deadly Venoms and that whole crew that made all of those movies, Shin Kun Tai and Fu Shin and Angela Mao Ying, they were all under that Shaw brothers umbrella. Mm-hmm. And all the time I spent going to New York and watching Kung Fu movies at the theater, and that being the basis of my thing. Ironically, many years later, and further in the conversation, I ended up going to China, getting invited to China, Taiwan, in order to make a movie. I didn't know who it was with. The Sun Sing Theater up in New York, still going back to your bases, he approached me about, because I had kind of gotten notoriety through the 70s, and somewhere in just competing, doing all the weapons and all the stuff and all that type thing as a competitor, and got invited to come to Taiwan to do a movie. And I said, a movie? Well, I was younger then, a lot more headstrong. Of course I'll go do it. I got all the moves. I got there, and I got there, and I didn't know at the time. I got met at the airport, believe it or not, 40, 50 photographers, lights going off. The old man with white hair and his wife, they picked me up. They're announcing this is my new star. He's going to be the next star for us. I didn't really know his name. I didn't speak Chinese very well then. And I spent 3 or 4 months there making the movie The Dancing Warrior, which is out now as The Warrior. But got a chance to train with a lot of guys that were just
If you see the movie, you know, not bragging, it's an amazing choreography. I mean, the fight scenes are amazing. I can brag about that because I can also say it wasn't me. It was me doing it. But I had these guys that were putting the fight scenes together and all like that. I didn't know, and here's another one, Jack. I didn't know who these guys were. You know, Luther Chu, which was Lu Fong, which is the centipede, and it was the 5 deadly venom guys were on the set with me, giving me advice on fight scenes and putting my fight scenes together. The old man that was over here, I knew his name was, we called him Chung Che, was Chong Che, which was the top director for the Shaw Brothers all through the 60s. And most of those movies we were seeing was that guy. I made a movie with Chong Che being directed by the guys from 5 Deadly Venoms. And recently when Urban Action Film Festival brought Chong Che up, and everybody, that was interesting because everybody, you remember you were there, it went down the steps, out the thing, halfway down 42nd Street, a line waiting to get photographs of him. I remember I walked over and I looked, and I didn't get it yet because I just still knew him as Luther Chu. And I'm looking at Lu Fong. And I'm thinking, that's my old friend. So I walked past everybody, and walked to the front, and the lady said, "Sir, you're gonna have to get in the line. It's an hour. It's probably gonna be an hour wait in line to get an autograph." And I said, "Ma'am, I don't want to give him a photograph. I don't want to get a photograph. I want to give him one." I slid a picture of he and I in Taiwan together, holding hands, and he just looked up, screamed, and jumped over the table and grabbed me. And it was then that I realized this is my old friend. And that's when he told me, he said, "You never realized who was taking those shots. You didn't know who we were. We rode around on motor scooters all through Taiwan, making films, you know, all over the joint. And I just knew this was my friend, you know, Luther Chu. And again, I've seen him again recently in Taiwan when I went back for a Bai-Shir ceremony. But I got a chance. You can't really relive those moments. Everybody knows about the recent stuff, but I look back at it and say, "Oh my God, I got a chance to do a movie with Chong Che." And in fact, I think it was probably the last movie he did because Shaw Brothers had kind of gone down then. He was doing independent movies. And so, but it was Chong Che's. I have the right to say to everybody, I may have done one of the last movies with the great director, Chong Che from Shaw Brothers. And again, had those guys from the 5 Deadly Venoms actually creating fight scenes for me. Kind of spoiled me, and came back and found it out. But that was probably in the 80s. But you know, the 70s was that whole New York period, which I got educated because again, I was competing locally and killing it. But then I came to New York and got schooled and found out you had to have a show. I don't care whether you were doing forms, weapons, or fighting. If you couldn't dive over and roll, Ron, what's the breaking master? The guy called himself
Ron Jeter, Master Breaker.
I remember the Master Breaker. I remember bringing a team up there to watch him, and he would come out and roll like a big guy. You know, I am the Master Breaker. And he would just go in there, he would do all this kind of stuff.
Warrior, stay strong all the time. The bomb, boom.
DC, we didn't know that everybody had to have a show leading into it. I'm thinking this guy's just arrogant. And you know, he walked out as the last guy, looked at the judges and went, "You can judge me if you can. I don't know that you're qualified." And I'm thinking, who is this arrogant guy? He rolled over to a stack of bricks that I don't know how tall they were. He went, "This is the pseudo," shoom, and went through them. And then he went down the thing, and "This is the Palmer." He must have broke up half a house. And then at the end, he had a stack of bricks, and he looked at the judges and went, "In case you don't understand, this is the head broke." This big rascal jumped and dived, hit with his head, rolled out, and came up to the judges and went, "I am the Master Breaker." And I jumped up and started screaming. And you know, years later, I brought him to the Capitol Classic.
Yeah, 1985.
I was thinking to myself, who is this guy? I mean, but everybody, I mean, I watched you fight, and I'm not just because you're on the show here, but the reason that you were so popular, and I'm going to tell you, you probably already know, wasn't just that you could fight with the best of them and beat most of them and all like that. It's just that it was always a show with you. when you came out, you'd be popping and locking and stuff like that, and then beat the guy and then pop back to your side of the ring. And you know, we were from this conservative Washington, D.C. I'm thinking, who is this guy, Jerry Fontanez? There was no question that you and the brother that always traveled with you, you guys put on a show, because you had a group called the Pop-Up. You guys were
the Rocksteady Crew.
Yeah, and you guys could dance. You beat people and then dance off to the stage or out of the ring. And I think that was the golden area, because you had to be. You had guys that just thought it was all about show. They couldn't win, but there were guys that had real talent, like Master Brick and yourself and folks that could come out, put on a show for the folks, which brought the crowds in. Us guys that were promoting back then didn't understand that you had to bring a crowd in, and then you had to have talent. So, you know, that was kind of my start in it through the 70s. I got a chance to come up and compete against probably the best martial artists I'd ever seen through New York and Pennsylvania. And Cynthia Rothrock, they were all out there. You know, we were all kind of competing. And I didn't jump on the national circuit till in the middle of the 70s. And, you know, when I first went to the Battle, not the Battle of Atlanta, the first one I ever went to was actually the St. Petersburg.
The U.S. Open back then. Ted Kretzky.
Yeah, Ted Kretzky. Wasn't called the U.S. Open then, but they had another name. And
Battle of the Superstars.
I jumped in a band with Cynthia Rothrock and a bunch of Chim Poise people and all. We went down there and competed, and it was just insane. Won my first big trophy there, and then I was hooked on the national circuit. I mean, I started traveling and between New York but still basically East Coast. And you know, that's when I got a chance to compete against people like Peter Morales, Anthony Chan, these guys that were major kung fu, Brian and Cynthia and just everybody. So you had to come, and I did over 18 weapons at that time. People thought that the rope dart was my main weapon. And they said, well, was that your favorite weapon? I said, well, no, it was the one that people liked the most. I first started competing, it was with a long staff. I had a long staff, the wax staff, and that's what I became known for. My first big tournaments, Battle of Atlanta and Krinsky's tournament, I did long staff. And when I left to compete at the first Battle of Atlanta, I won that. I didn't win the overall at night. I competed against Peter Morales, but I won the Kung Fu thing that night. He was defending champion, doing broadsword. And years later, after I went to China, and we can get into that a little bit later in the 80s, but in the 70s, it was all about different weapons. And I thought every time I go in, I'm going to do a different weapon, you know, hook swords or something. And but all I remembered for mostly is the rope dart. You know, that's kind of the thing. But I like to tell folks that no, back then I was a kung fu guy, which means that you had to be able to do at least 18 different weapons: long weapons, quan dao, short weapons, sectional weapons. The true kung fu stylists had to be versed in daggers and short weapons and all kind of broadswords, as well as the long extended weapons. So that was the competition days. And I remember coming to New York. I was all right in DC. I was killing it in DC. But when I came to New York, that's when I learned that it had to have a show. And you notice I learned from you guys. And I'm not just pushing your thing. By the time I came out with the rope dart, I didn't come out and just put it down on the thing and start kicking it around and spinning. I walked out with it all in a little braided thing like this. And I'd walk out and do my little thing. You know, my name is Dennis Brown, blah, blah, blah. My weapon is the rope dart. And then I'd grab it and it unfoiled and I'd go rope dart. And after I got through competing, I'd always spin around and catch it and go rope dart. Well, folks say, well, where'd that come from? That wasn't DC. These said, no, I understood if you're going to compete against these guys, because again, you weren't just a fighter, you were a forms guy too. And you were a showman. You were a showman. And and I learned about the total package of competing when you come out there. So even in the fighting, everybody came out and they had their own entrance that they put in. Yeah.
It's characters. You know, a lot of people were influenced by the wrestlers. You know, you looked at WWF and what I had back then was WWF. And to me, you know, I love Dusty Rhodes, the Atomic Elbow, you know, and Superstar Billy Graham. So these were what would have been a crossover from the comic books to what would be the comic books in person or superhero in person, which was the wrestler. So that's what I noticed, that a lot of the influence, of course, comes from Gorgeous George when it comes to that braggadocious. Of course, rest in peace, Muhammad Ali, when it got that. So that was my particular influence. You know, I figured, well, what would happen if Bruce Lee was born in Spanish Harlem, raised in the Bronx, and grew up in the hip hop culture, but loved the Incredible Hulk, but moved around like Spider-Man because he wasn't really that big and strong, so he had to use his strength to become this guy named Fast Feet that my mother nicknamed me on September 18th, 1981. That's when she gave me that name. Wow. Fearless Fast Feet. Said, Mom, too many F's are going to make fun of me. I promise I'll always be fearless, but I'll be first name Fast, last name Feet.
And they're gonna put that on your tombstone, Fast Feet. Who was that? Fast Feet was Jerry Fontanez.
So I really believe that's my real name, because Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. If we would have been, you know, I'm a Borinquen, right? Borinquen is a Taino Indian that was in an island called Borique. So we're Boricuas today. We're known as Puerto Ricans, but realistically, which confused people. They would see me in the summertime, they're thinking, especially in the DC area, I'm Turkish, I'm Egyptian, I'm Persian. They were always confused, and then the minute I opened my mouth, I'm he's from New York, you know.
Yeah, as soon as you open your mouth, it's a New York Rican. I mean,
exactly. But I think the reason why the rope dart always sticks out is because the magazines love that. When you took that photo and that 3D just coming at you, it's like, wow. And plus, it was a difficult thing to do because it seemed like you was intertwined in yourself, and other people were using more of the other weapons. Yeah. But you mentioned a few people there. There's one in particular. That means he must have been hanging out with the Wylam crew, you know, because those guys with the rope dart. I mean, not the rope dart. Little Derek Whitehead. Whitehead. Oh my God, with the rope, the darts. Yeah. Rest in peace to all those guys.
Well, yeah, I came up in the 70s, traveling back and forth to Boston, the Trent Poy guys, and learned as much. My best friend is one of the guys from that Praying Mantis thing. I still learned a few moves from that, but you know, I used to travel a lot, New York, Boston, any place where I could pick up some skills or learn something new, and I think that's why later, after you know the movies and all like that came about, because on the circuit, you know, you get some notoriety. But the Chinese community knew me. Like I said, it was somebody from the Sun Sing Theater that actually said, do you want to go over there and do movies in the 80s? And at that time, I had already started trying to get together to do the first Capitol Classics. Because remember, I didn't start the Capitol Class, I think, till 1982. Yeah. But at that time, you remember, it wasn't any NASCAR. I was on the first guy.
Karate Illustrated rated tournaments. A and B. That's it.
That's it.
Ronaldo Barton.
Ronaldo Barton, exactly right. And he came to me, and I was just this little guy in Kung Fu, and this NASCAR circuit, North American Sports Karate. Now, I will tell you, I got beat up a little bit. Why are you getting into a karate circuit? And the first year I gave it at my high school. My friend Oso Tariq Cassell, we called him Infandici at that time, Infundi, but it was Oso Tariq Cassell. He was living in Vegas. We got to talking about I'm going to do this tournament, and I went to Slits, Coors. No, it was Slits. Slits was and I went for a sponsor. Nobody was doing that then. I went to a beer company, and I got got sponsored by Slits Beer. Decided I was going to give it, but I gave it at my little local high school, only hold about 500 people in the stands. And I gave this tournament, and I had this big name, this little teeny tournament. I'd never given one ever, not even a couple small ones before I tried it. I gave this tournament called the U.S. Capitol Classics. And that's with an O. That's not the capital. There's a capital in every state, but this was the capital. This is the U.S. Capitol Classic, sponsored by Schlitz. And so I had this little tournament with this big name, but you know, they all came out. Cindy came out, Linda Denley came out, Tara came in from Vegas to help run the operation, the very first one. And we packed the place. We had to close it down because we couldn't get over 500 people in there. And within 2 years, we moved it to another larger high school. And by the third year, we had moved it, third year ever given a tournament, we had moved it to the convention center in downtown DC.
I was there,
Very first
1985.
one.
I was there. And one of the things that blew me away about that particular event was seeing Keith Habayashi. And then the bottom of the so-called totem pole, see, there was a three-man set that was done by Nestor Lemus, John Quinlan, and Richard Brandon. Rest in peace. You think and then we had Derek Whitehead when there was Yao Lee student at the time because John Boy had went down to Florida. I think.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because one of them was doing a drunken style, which is, oh my God, that was John Quinlan. But and then there was the bottom of the totem pole of the group was this kid that to me is one of my favorite all time, Mr. Javon Holmes, climbing the monkey stick and spinning around and doing the head spin. Oh my God, it was so
the monkey staff, yes.
It was incredible to see those people. But going back just for a quick second, when you talk about the New York flavor and style, the main reason why a lot of those guys learned how to perform because they became part of the Oriental Order of Self-Defense. So great Grandmaster Aaron Banks was the influence to bring what would be vaudeville, so to speak, or Hollywood or Broadway to the events. And so a lot of things that were done was, and people just don't realize the influence this man had to have almost 19,500 people in Madison Square Garden in 1974 with Linda Lee right there at the time. So that's
Let me tell you something again. Only on your show we break out all these things. You bring out these things that a lot of people don't know. The first show that Aaron Banks gave at Madison Square Garden, I was still in DC, but I found some advertisement or something. I don't know, but I was a young, arrogant little guy at that time. I called him and said, "How are you calling this the greatest show on earth?" Whatever he called it. It had a big title, but you don't have kung fu people there. He said, "We got some kung fu people here." "Yeah, but you don't have us here." And I talked so much trash that sight unseen, he invited Mr. Lynn's crew to come to New York to perform. We actually performed on stage at the first Wide World of, what was it, Wide World?
Wide World of Sports, but the Oriental World of Self-Defense.
Oriental World of Self-Defense. We actually performed in that show, and that was the first time anybody saw us. We came up, did two-man fighting sets and just all kind of stuff. But I remember Moses Powell, that was the first time I saw him. We were this little group from DC, because we were big stuff in DC. So, we think, but you're in New York now, son. It's a whole different thing. And we're standing there, and I can remember going into the dressing room, put our little silks on and what have you, and he was in there getting dressed. But he had guys around him, and they were handing him stuff, and he was dressing him like he was the emperor or something. As all of a sudden he came out, and when he moved, he's a big man, but he took small steps, and so he looked like he was floating across the floor, right? Now, this was just this young guy looking at him, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? And people kept coming up and performing, and he kept just making comments and all this kind of stuff, imitation, that kind of thing. No, that was Master Breaker was yelling imitation. That was another story. But he was like critiquing them. Well, he should be doing this, and I'm standing beside him, such a big guy, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? There's no humility here at all, and so I'm just about through with him because I see he had these guards around him, but his students, I know now, and they finally called his name, Moses Powell, and he started moving towards the stage, and everybody just cleared and went crazy. And when he went up there and did that one finger rollout, I had never seen that, and he just performed, and it was just it was a New York show pretty much. And it just changed my whole way of thinking about putting on shows. But I actually was at that Aaron Banks, the first one, this little kid from Washington, D.C. And again, I tell people here on Jerry's show, you guys hear some things that you don't know. I never, I don't say very often, I was in the first show that Aaron Banks gave. Even though I came home with my tail between my legs because I saw so many stars, the guys climbing up on ladders to break ice. It's
Richard Barrety.
Yeah. And it was just so many superstars there then that, you know, I look back at my history and said, boy, you know, when I'm old and real old, because I'm old now, but when I'm real old and everybody's just sitting around pointing at me like that old man over there, he ain't nobody, he can't do this, he can't do that. I want to just be able to just in my own head look at him and go, all I need you to know is I've seen some things. That's it. I've seen, believe me, I've seen some things, and I've seen stuff that folks don't even know. But again, that quarter from New York, Philadelphia was the deal.
So it's interesting and it's crazy at the same time when you think about it, because again, and I call him what, you know, in the early 1990s, Great Grandmaster Aaron Banks was in charge of my public relations. I had the audacity to hire him.
You needed it. You were a showman.
Well, my instructor, you know, like I said, Tiger Kim himself was in the show. So
Yeah.
I'm saying, well, he's in the show, you know, with the spikes between the arms and standing on top of swords and you know, breaking boards and splitting apples and all types of crazy stuff. Oh my God, I saw that in Wild World of Sports on ABC. You know, that was incredible. And there's a Madison Square Garden completely over the top. A lot of people don't know that show went on tour with the same tour of the Rolling Stone, the company that did Rolling Stone, and they even performed up to across to the Albert Hall, the Royal Albert Hall for the Queen of England. Also, they performed for her, and they also toured South America. People just didn't get it. So Baggs had a way of thinking that was way beyond other people. And of course, he did crazy stuff. You might have saw the man catch a bullet with his mouth. You know, that was
there.
Right. So that was part of bringing people. But what he really was a connector. Yeah. He didn't care where you came from. There was no color, creed, style, or anything. He's the first person to bring Yamaguchi, the cat himself, to American soil. And I, you know, so when I think about, I miss him. By the way, when I say AB, that means him. AB, Aaron Banks. That's I'm it's paying homage to him.
Do you remember? Because I was there. Who was it that was shooting arrows?
Oh, Ronald Duncan. Ronald Duncan.
Yes, there was breaking arrows with a nunchuck.
Yeah.
And catching them also.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that something?
Superheroes.
I tell people that now, and they go, you know, old guys always making up stuff. The guy was shooting a bullet, he was catching it. Yes. The guy was shooting arrows, and he was say yes. I said, guys, those were the golden years.
And the Madison Square Garden, packed house. Mm-hmm. You know, in '76, he actually took it to the Felt Forum. Did 2 shows the same day.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned a few people. You didn't mention Roger Tung, but I'm sure you have a great relationship with Roger Tung too, right? Because Anthony Chan was the first one that bring in wushu. Because there was a time you went from traditional to wushu, because all of a sudden, you know, Chan Poi or Poi Chan and Yao Lin, there was the white lump, but these guys started doing like some wushu too. What was that about? When did you switch?
Roger Tung, the first time I went to China in 82, I think 82, 83, was with Roger Tung. Anthony Chan, Roger Tung was Roger Tung's instructor. Roger Tung was Peter Morales' instructor. So they were all in that wushu.
And Keith Hayashi was classmate.
Going down. But I was honored that when they picked the first group of people to ever go into communist China, we called it Red China then. I mean, Nixon had just done his thing. They had 2 shows here touring from China at the Kennedy Center performing and all like that. So China decided, as an exchange, we want to bring in a group from America to go there. And it was, I was at that group, of course, Roger Tong sponsored it. Peter Morales was with that group. There was a number of folks, but I was the only one in that group who didn't study wushu. I studied just pure kung fu, old world kung fu. So when I got there and they started doing the line basics and they're doing the smack kicks and all like that, I was learning it for the first time. And again, you think about what a privilege it was to get there. Number one, to this day, Wu Ben, which I brought to the Capitol Classics once, and I introduced him on the stage. He didn't speak any English, and I told the crowd at night show, "This is my instructor. This is Wu Ben," and they gave him a little golf clap, you know, those things like that. And then I said, okay, in a minute, I'm going to tell you something else you don't know. But he is also the only instructor for not Jackie Chan,
Jet Li.
Jet Li, Li Liang Jet. And I get confused because his name was Li Liang Jet. Li is his family name. When he came to America, they put it on N, so it would be Liang Jet Li. But Jet Li was his name. And I named, and everybody just exploded. And then he looked at me and asked me, he said, Cafe, what'd you say? I said, well, I told him, the second time I told him you were Jet Li's instructor. He said, why is it all the stuff I've done? And the only time I can get around, because he was like the top trainer of all people in China. I mean, he's still a national treasure there. But we brought him in, but we got to China. I didn't know anything about wushu. All we knew is no one had ever been there before. This wasn't Taiwan. This wasn't Hong Kong. You know, this wasn't Bangkok. This was Red China. There were still big Mao statues everywhere. There was not a car to be seen. Jerry, I can remember being in between Tiananmen Square and Forbidden City, 5 lanes of highway, far as you could see, a half a mile in each direction, forward and back, and it was a stopped traffic jam, wasn't moving, and it was all bicycles. That many bicycles, just thousands and thousands of people. Now, he called me, I got into this because Wu Ben called me a cafe. And to this day, he still calls me cafe or chocolate or brown, kind of because I'm chocolate and my name's Brown, so it fit. But we had a bunch of folks there. Peter Morales was P-Da because he was Spanish, spicy food, and so he called him rotten egg, the dark eggs, P-Da, and all like that. But we got a chance to train. When I look back at that experience, Jerry, it will never be done again. I mean, we were the first ones to go in, and we stayed for 3 or 4 months. What we got a chance to do is get off a plane. They flew, took a train down to Anhui, Hebei, not Hebei, Anhui in Hebei, and to the National Wushu Championship. We got there just in time to see their national champ. And for a week, we watched all of the top performers in Wushu at that time perform. Then we took a 2-day train trip over to Nanjing, where we went into the complex and we were going to study. But what I'm saying is that what we got there, they asked us, what do you want to learn? And I said rope dart. Right away, you can't learn it. But I ended up learning 15 forms that period we were there. Everybody, of course, I had to learn all the stuff while we were there. But they kept saying, no rope dart, you're not ready, you're not ready. But what they did is whoever, if I said I wanted broadsword then, I got a chance to train with the guy who had just won, because we were Americans, the first Americans to China. They brought in the national champion from that competition to teach us broadsword. If you were learning staff, the guy I learned the long staff from was the long staff national champion of China. And it went like that with all of them. It wasn't just me, but they brought whatever you were going to learn. So when I learned rope dart, the guy they brought in to teach me rope dart, because they taught me like 14 things, kept saying, no rope dart, you don't have any background. So finally, after I'd learned everything I could learn, they said, would you want to learn one more thing before you leave? You got another couple weeks. Said, I want to learn rope dart. Well, they brought in the guy who was the #1 rope dart guy in all of China, and he taught me the rope dart in like 5 lessons. And I had, and spent the rest of the next week perfecting it. So when I came back, I had just learned rope dart, but I had learned it from the #1 rope dart guy in all of China. When I look back at my career of all the things I've done with NASCAR and as a competitor and just all of the movie and all that stuff, I look at that highlight and I'm thinking to myself, man, that was the chance of a lifetime. How did I end up on that? I mean, we stayed in the dorms. We lived with the Chinese folks. We showered with them. We ate with them. And we were just these little Americans that were way too inexperienced to even be there. But, you know, to be able to say that we got a chance to be the first ones to go in. And as you know, I've probably been back 10 times over the years, taking groups back to study it with Wu Ben at the Beijing Institute, which is, again, the #1 institute of all in China, and to have the prestige enough to be able to get my team, not to just train somewhere in China, some little province, some little village. They always brought my students straight to the Beijing Institute, and they trained with the #1 teams even though we weren't nearly qualified to be on the floor with them. But, you know, we got a chance to see the best, so you knew where you had to go.
A dropout from Howard that was a mother, a single parent mother,
Yeah.
and coming from the hood. Drop. So this is what I'm saying. Martial arts absolutely is our DNA. It's in our DNA.
Yeah, that's who we are. Why at 70 something? I'm in mid 70s. Why am I still going? You ever seen a NASCAR tournament? I'm not there.
No, but
Yeah,
it's, like you said, it's in your DNA in so many different ways. It's interesting because I guess was it the second trip that you took Bam with you? Because it's hard to listen, for whatever it's worth, guys. And this is what I love, right? Now you know how emotional Professor Willie Bam Johnson can be, because he's graceful. He's always graceful.
Yeah.
But in his interview, I have to stop him from crying because he starts talking about when you went to the ghetto, grabbed him, let him know how he was number one, and you belong here. Saving people's lives is what this is all about. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. How many lives do you think you've been able to, that stick out, that you're proud of?
Well, you know, there's been so many of them. There's so many of them. You mentioned Willie Bam Johnson. You know, I met him as a young kid. I think he was like 17 or something, but he lived in Baltimore, and from Baltimore to DC is you can't walk. I mean, it's an hour ride in a car. But you know, I remember the first time he showed up at my door. I came to my door, and he was actually sitting outside the door, and I didn't know at the time that he was thumbing his way from Baltimore to DC.
He's trying to get into Shaolin Temple. That's what we saw in the movies. I'm trying to get in, whatever it takes.
But he came in, and he would never say anything about it. He'd come in and he would just train. Didn't know that he was going to be the superstar, but just knew he was dedicated. So we worked with him before and after hours. You know, I could see that he had talent. He had already had some martial skills and all like that. But there were times when we would put him on the Trailway bus to go back and forth to Baltimore. But after a while, that got too expensive. So, you know, after he trained all day, we'd put him on the bus every night, and he'd drive back to Baltimore. So I got to the point where I was actually driving him to Baltimore, not just him, because I was on 5th and Kennedy Street, which was the worst drug corner in all of Washington, D.C. When they talked about drugs in D.C., they would say, yeah, in that area, you know, 5th and Kennedy. My school was on the corner of 5th and Kennedy. So I had some characters in my school, and Bam was going through some things, and you know his story. He's gone through it, but he was in that environment. And I got to the point where I remember telling him that I'm not going to put you on the Trailway. There was many nights I would take all my guys that lived in different parts of cities around to their houses, young guys that were in that environment, even in DC. And then I would drive an hour to Baltimore, take him to Baltimore, and then drive back home. And we did that many, many, many nights because we knew he was dedicated. And I remember until one day I just decided I'm not going to keep bringing you over here and back because I know you're young without meeting your family, because I don't even know how you're doing this. It's amazed at your commitment. But he finally took me over to where he lived. And, you know, it was in our, you know, the projects, you know, the wire things and the steps and all like that. And he took me up to his house. I remember going in. And his mother, he didn't have a lot. I mean, you could see they were struggling, and she was doing the best. But I came from a single mother family, so I had gone through some of that. But I remember going into his room. He may not remember. First thing he did is, let me take you to my room. She, I guess, slept on the fold-out couch like my mother did, because kids had a room. But I went in there, and he had posters everywhere. Bruce Lee, all kind of kung fu, anything he could find in the thing. And I don't know if I told him that, but I'm thinking, this little guy is committed. That was the first thing that I heard of him. And after then, I just made up my mind that I know he's going through some things, so whatever I can do to help him out. And again, you can see his story. We spent a lot of time together. He started traveling. And again, we knew the talent that he was going through. We kind of knew the background that he came from. So it wasn't like we were naive. We knew he had come to this background. And that it kept pulling him back. I didn't know that. And we opened up a school for him in Baltimore when his mother passed, to be honest, as I remember it, because he was out there. He was the projects. I don't know whether he couldn't stay there or what, but his mother passed. And for whatever reason, we ended up on North Avenue renting a house, a little small a house, 3-story little house. And his first school was literally, God bless him, was the first floor was the school. And then the second, you go up these little steps, the second floor was the 2 change-up rooms and a few lockers. And then you climb up to the 3rd floor, and I think that's where he lived. And it was a couple blocks from the high school because he hadn't finished high school then. And that's how we got into the school thing, and he started running schools there in Baltimore. And after then, it's just a storied background. He went on to grow. But we've had many, many guys like that. I mean, I can start naming them, but probably 20, I can think of maybe 20 guys like that because of the neighborhood I was in that we took off the streets. Some of them ended up in lockup. Some of them ended up in the street. Some of them we had to get off of drugs. All kind of stories like that. And again, I won't get into the names, but now almost all of them are productive people now. And I'm not telling people a fantasy here. Most of these guys either run their own schools, run their own businesses, went on to go to school. And you know, we are very proud to sit back. And I think when my time is up, I want us to be able to sit back and say, you know, don't judge me by the 70s or the 80s or the Capital Classics or the trips to China. Look at the people I've produced. Because I don't have 25 schools all over the place. I have one school which I still teach in. But I probably have in this area, Washington, D.C. area, I probably have at least 20, 25 of my students that are running their own operations. Sam Scott and people like that, Yusef Moore, all these guys that have turned into great, great martial artists. And people think, well, is Master Brown upset because they're all out here running the school? They don't know. I wake up in the middle of the night and say, you know, I got them in the right direction. Hopefully, even if they had been studying before, maybe we inspired them to become these great martial artists. And I look back, I count my blessings at not how many students I've taught, because I've taught over the years 40,000 or so, maybe way more than that. But look at the students that my students have influenced. And same thing with, you know, all the changes we were blessed to make with the EFC, you know, Nick Kokinas, and the influence he had on me. What a lot of people don't know is that EFC, the first board member that he ever took in when he decided to stop doing Arthur Murray's Dance Studio and June Ree, and stop doing June Ree and open up Educational Funding Company, I was his first client. I was the first one. He had actually come to my school, my little ghetto school, which you had to have a lock and buzz to get in. And this, I told you the corner, this is the drug corner. I see this long white limo, a Cadillac pull up. This Greek god get out with that Kokina's hair, that white hair. And I'm looking out my window thinking, who is this guy and does he know where he is? And it started our relationship because he buzzed my door. He came in, he sat down and told me who he was and all the work he had done with June Ree. And I'm thinking about trying to start this thing. He didn't say call it EFC, but this thing, self-help thing to help schools to grow, I can do for schools, but I'd like to start with you. And he wanted to work for me exclusively. I didn't have any money. I was barely paying my rent, Jerry. And so, of course, I just laughed at him and said, yeah. He said, well, I'll come back another time. Well, I never really got back to him. He decided in the interim that, you know what I'll do? I'll just start this company, Educational Funding Company. And again, that's a whole nother story. But I was the first client that he took on, and I was the first one he put on the board thing. So I look back at my career, people say, what are the things you're proud of? Is it the martial arts trip to China? I said, no, you know what? I was one of the founding members of NASCA, North American Sports Karate. I got in right at the end, the last A-rated tournament under Ronaldo Barton in Karate Illustrated. Then we changed into NASCA. Said I also was one of the first ones with EFC. And when I'm sitting in my living room by myself, I don't think about all the trophies I won and all like that. And I'm thinking, isn't this, you've had a fun career. You know, I like to sit back, and very few people can remember it because there weren't that many of them that were around. The ones that were around are all about themselves. There's very few guys like you that I can sit down with and I can start talking about the history of martial arts. And at every level of it, somebody, but Jerry was there. he was performing, or he was doing this, he was doing that. But all through those periods, there's not a lot of guys like you. When you talk to him, you know, you start telling the story, and you realize I'm not telling him a story. I'm just he can actually correct me on some things. Like, you remember when Tarari fought Little John at Madison Square Garden,
Nassau Coliseum, you mean?
Nassau Coliseum. It was a big place in New York.
No, but this is funny because
that's what I'm saying. You can correct it. What Tari never knew is that I rented a 47-seat bus and brought all my students to New York, way up in the nosebleed section. We didn't have the big money. And we brought all of our students there to see him fight Little John. Now, I know how the outcome came, but you know how much yelling and screaming we were doing from the rafters. And again, years later, we became like best friends and did a lot of traveling together, a lot of business together and all like that. But can you imagine, before I even knew him, I had brought a 47-seat bus of people to the arena to see him fight. And again, that goes on a whole nother story, how that transferred, and we ended up doing so much stuff together.
So again, it's incredible that we are alive in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to joke around, because it's not really joking. If I knew I was going to be around this long, I might have kept some of that money, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's things that are priceless.
Yeah.
Completely priceless, you know. I've taken too much of your time already. I had allocated 45 minutes, and I apologize that I was able to stimulate what would be some of your. But today you've been spot on. I mean, in so many different levels. I'm so, if I can say so without being out of line, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And one of the main reasons is because when I look at you and Tiari, you guys look healthy, you know? Yeah. I mean, there's so many of our elders and peers and even youngers that have passed away, and it rips me apart. It rips me apart. Obviously, when I look at your lovely wife who set up nice and early, and I'm like, you know what? I was in the middle of interviewing Jack Dark, you know?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I see, you know, the name pop up, and I'm like, wait a second. And then it made sense, because most people would arrive on time, which on time is late.
Yeah.
And when you're professional.
And late is unacceptable.
Yeah. So all those little basics. But when I see her and I see her face, I'm saying, my gosh, she looks as beautiful as ever. And your two daughters and your grandkids, and, you know, so I know that, you know, what I was saying is the truth. Martial arts is a real family, guys.
It is.
It's
family forever.
And it doesn't matter what color, creed, because for whatever it's worth, he didn't say, I was the first black man. No. Whatever color, the color, the color. The human race is the race that we've always been part of. I mean, come on, guys, you know? And that's the whole thing that, and I know a lot of people have preconceived notions about you and about me too. When they see the Fast Beat character do his antics, and they see this other guy on stage maybe speaking and what have you, they get confused.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? Well, we're all of them. Because if I talk about competition, your face changes.
Yeah.
The minute it's this competition, you went into that whole thing. When you watch it, I think you're going to be nice and happy about it. But what I'm most proud of you is leading by example. You've always been that person who I believe knows that your action really is a ripple to a whole bunch of other people. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. I know it has not been easy. We talking about the 60s, the 70s, even the 80s. And in the 1980s, guys, just for a little historical fact, the first NASCAR president was Cesar Barkowski from Canada.
And I was there.
I know you was there. You was in one of those closed door meetings that a whole bunch of stuff was happening. Yeah. And then for a little while, Jim Lantrop was, and then eventually, see, and this is just information that people judge.
That's why you're the historian.
Hey, I was so excited. I said, maybe I can get, you know. Now, what title do you presently use? Because throughout the years, you've used some of the African stuff that I love, you know? So was it Mafundi or Umfundi? How you pronounce when you use that?
Well, you know, I started out at a traditional Kung Fu school, and we didn't have belts. We didn't have no rank. We didn't have nothing. It was just a school. And a lot of my old black belts has been with me 40, 50 years. they still call me DB. But then, we started using Shifu or Sifu at first because it was Cantonese, but we ended up using Shifu.
Yeah.
And after we got involved with Oso Tari Cassell, we started working with Talone and the guys in Chicago, and he implemented this whole thing of the elders there were Mfundishi, so we were Umfundi, which is a Swahili term. And I used that for many years, all through the 70s and early 80s. 80s, I was using Mfundi. And then after years and years later, Mfundishi Talone actually came to the Capitol Classics, surprised me, came up on the stage and said, "We're promoting you. You've been calling yourself Mfundi and you're doing all of this. We're going to make you Mfundishi." So I started using the term Mfundishi. So I've used different terms. People say, well, people come and go, is DB here? Don't get insulted. Those guys studied with me in the 60s and early 70s. If you hear them say Sifu, that's those that Shifu. If you hear them say Mfundi, that was probably late 70s and the 80s and all into the 90s. And if you hear anybody say Mfundishi, it's that. But I use just the term, and just recently people started calling me Master Brown, Grandmaster Brown, and all like that. And I see people that will walk up now and say something about, Master Brown, and one of my sighted students go, "That's Grandmaster Brown." And I say, hey, it's okay, man. But one of my oldest students walked in from the early 71, 72, maybe my 4th or 5th student. And he walked in and asked the people in the class, could you let DB know that I'm here? They said, who? I said, DB. And I'm coming out the thing and I said, "Hey, Irv, how you doing?" They said, "Sir, that's Grandmaster Brown." I said, "No, cool it. We were in the street together." To him, and no, he was my student and probably one of my best students, but his name is Gerhard Irvin, and I just called him Irv. And so I had this name, Dennis Brown, and he still calls me DB. So again, the title for me is a show of respect, and I appreciate it. If you call me Grandmaster Brown, I'll answer, "Don't call me that," or Master Brown. Well, no, I'm Grandmaster Brown, or Shifu. No, you need to call. I answer to whatever you remember me being, because at the end of the day, I'm just happy to be a martial artist. It's been 55 years for me, and I look in the mirror sometime and I can't believe, are you still doing martial arts? Well, martial arts for me was never just a sport. It was never just a pastime, and never just getting in shape. It's a way of life. It's who I am. I am a martial artist. That's who I am. Well, how long will you continue to teach? Well, as long as somebody wants to hear what I have to say. And how long are you going to run the Capitol Classics? Well, as long as the guys think I can judge, because I don't have to always be the center judge. If somebody comes up and says, "Oh, that old man, he just don't know anything about these forms." Say, well, I do have some ego, because I was a martial artist. I did fight. And so one guy told me one day, "Well, I remember you were a forms guy, you were fighting, you were a weapons guy and all like that, but you never did any fighting." And I said, "No, you're confused. If you ask somebody about me in the early 70s when I was fighting in New York, in the Chinese term,
Fujao Pai.
Fujao, going up fighting the Fujao Pai thing with those guys, I said I fought full contact. And I showed him a picture of me and Paul Vigio on the stage going down. I said, I'm not going to get into how that turned out. It did all right. I got something. It was basically a draw. They gave us both first place, but they stopped it in the 3rd round and gave us both. So I'm standing there with this Fujao Pai showing him a thing, and somebody goes, and I got on, the wraps. There wasn't no big gloves and all like that. And somebody said, "I didn't know you fought." I said, "Well, you didn't know me until I started in the late 70s. I said, "If you go back in those days," I said, "No, I fought in Sandar tournaments. If you know my history, check my students. Bamden will tell you that whenever Junior had full contact fights out there at Jeff Smith School or wherever, it wasn't uncommon for me to have 4 or 5 fighters in the ring doing full contact fighters, knocking folks out. And we were the only, because we were wearing shukatus then, with the Tarari influence. But down in Virginia, if you ask them, they said no. When they used to give the full contact fights down there, the karate style, Okinawan full contact fights down there, said, I can show you films of me in the ring and 7, 8 of my students in there sparring full contact. They said, we didn't know. We thought all you did was, I know, you thought I just danced. So, but no, the reason that I thought that our training was so hard is because we always maintained that full contact background. And, you know, you said Fujao Pai, the schools in New York, all the schools in New York, they fought. In Boston, they did fighting. It was a different type of thing. We didn't do points and stuff like that, so it took me a while. And that's why I ended up with the China Open, because after the U.S. Capital Class got big, so many of the Tiger Claw out there, they came to me and they said, you know, Dennis, you've gotten so well known all over the country. We have a lot of respect for you. Tiger Claw, inside Kung Fu guys, David Chow, I guess his name was. They all put me on the cover of their magazines and all like that. But why is it that you spend all this time building up a karate tournament? You know, all your background, why didn't you end up doing the same thing you did? I said, because we didn't have the background, the structure that the karate guys have. And there weren't enough really big Kung Fu schools to back it. I said, so I did something that was, and you think about it, was crazy. I'm a Kung Fu guy in a room with 20 karate people trying to build the U.S. Capital Classics. I said it was after your Kung Fu people started hitting me up saying, you know, we just wish you had done something for the Kung Fu people instead of going out as a trader and building the karate. And you build all these karate people, you got all these big name karate people coming in. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to be able to put all the Chinese, the multifaceted things about the Chinese art into one ring, the Chinese ring, where they have Tai Chi people and Kung Fu people and Wushu people, and say they're all in one ring, just compete. That's like having a yoga guy and a traditional guy and an extreme guy, put them all in the same ring and said, just come up with a winner. I said, so I was never going to get NASCA to add all these different things, styles of Chinese styles, Wing Chun and just all the stuff. So I started with Tiger Claw's help, many years ago, I started the China Open. And now I have the U.S. Capital Classics and the China Open, and still trying to grow it and going and on. So that's how that kind of started. But I've always been a multi-style martial artist, but I am the Kung Fu guy. I tell guys, I don't go up and say, well, I'm kind of a karate, no, I'm a Kung Fu guy. But Junri said before he passed, and I'll leave it at this, one of the nicest things he ever said to me, sounds like an insult, he said, you have really, really good students. Your forms are really strong. Your students can fight. He said, but the only reason that your Kung Fu is so respected is because I taught you how to kick correctly when you were in Taekwondo. So when you see my students doing Wushu Kung Fu forms, they still lock that side kick out with the strong ridge, and they lock their round kicks out, and they do full extensions and all like that. And people come in and go, you do Kung Fu, but you kind of kick like karate guys. And I said, well, why can't you do both?
Well, he also taught Bruce Lee that kick too, so that's not too bad. And that was a Kung Fu guy.
Right. Bruce was doing it, and so I tell people and I tell my students, they come in, I put them on the stretch bar and have them locking out 20 side kicks straight up and down, popping them out like that, and they go, "Is this a Kung Fu school?" And I'm saying, "No, I'm a martial artist instructor. My system is Kung Fu, but hey guys, grappling, we call it Shinai is our locking and trapping, Shui Jiao is our grappling." I said in 1970, I was doing on the ground wrestling with Grandmaster Lin. It's just that nobody wanted to learn that then.
That's where Tayari Kasau did the first floor fighting against Benny Akira's also, not just Little John.
That's right. That's right. He was out there on the ground. And again, I saw him at Madison Square Garden, but didn't meet him. I didn't meet him till many years later in 1978, I believe, or something like that, 74 maybe, 74, when the first Chinese Wushu group came to the Kennedy Center here. My students bought $25 for a box seat. That was a lot of money. They did 4 shows that weekend. My students bought me box seats at all 4 shows. And I was sitting there up in the box seats thinking I'm big stuff. And I see Talona and Tayari from New York and his whole crew, Vita, and all of them come strolling down to the front of the place. And I'm looking over and go, oh my God, that's the guy from New York. That's Madison Square Garden guy. That's the guy. That's the Phil Forum, I think. Wherever it was, you said it was.
The Nassau Coliseum. It doesn't matter closing down. Yeah.
Guy. But I remember during the break, I sent my students down to ask him, could I come down and speak to him and all like that. they met him coming up, I think they said, and said that Tyra Cassell wants to meet you out in the lobby. And that's when I met him. I met him in the lobby, told him who I was. Talona was with him, Vita was with him, all of them. They had come, I guess they had come to DC to see this wushu show. And they ended up staying over the weekend. I put them up at my house, in the basement of my house. And that was the first time I got to know Tyra. We shot pool all night long and talked trash all night long. But I had introduced you to Talona and Corona Vita and Tyra Cassell in my basement. And again, we went on to become really good friends over the years. And again, and you know the rest of the story.
It's incredible because little Barbertool, red hair, spinning on his head, jumping on his brother's backs and all that stuff. Oh, why did
remember when Vita and those guys got into the circus?
Yeah.
The Ringling Brothers.
They did the routine in 85 in your event first.
And I brought them to the Capitol classes, had them performing, they're climbing up on poles and everything. I never forget the write-up I got about my tournament, that thing, that they start off by saying Dennis Brown is running his tournament like a circus. And I said, wait, I thought I did a great show.
That was a compliment. Listen, what Banks would have said was, that's the real world. In the real world, they'll love it. We bring in the crowd. See, that was the thing, guys. Promoting was promoting.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't what I consider in many cases a booster club.
Yeah, yeah.
You would get the general public to come to the nighttime finals as a separate show.
Mm-hmm.
The daytime was one show.
Yeah.
The nighttime is where you got the general public, rest in peace of Jim Brown and those people that will be at your events, you know. My point is that the best is yet to come in some cases. In some cases, we have some of these memories. And I know that today you have had an opportunity to tap into just a few of those memories, because I say that I do impossible interviews, because they're not really interviews, they're conversations. And these interviews are interesting because I know you would have never gave anyone this amount of time. I know that is based out of your respect for me.
This is Fontanez. This is the historian. I want my legacy to be remembered, and the best way to do that is to tell it to Fontanez, because you know that's better than writing a book. It's going to be out here.
Hey, listen, I've just begun. My intention is to help the world. You know, if you can just give me just one more just a few more minutes. Yeah, you must be on a healthy lifestyle. When I look at your wife, I look at you. Mm-hmm. Your guys, it doesn't seem like eating it from the rooter to the tutor, you know, because you wouldn't be around.
Well, I tell you what, Jerry, we've been vegetarians since the early 70s. I think late 70s, early 80s. We're strict vegetarians. I don't do, but I do seafood. I do eat fish because, again, that when I started it was protein, but very rarely. But I do keep my protein up. And people won't believe this, but even today in the lockdown, every morning I have a full basement. I have a full gym in my basement. Anything you can see in Gold's Gym, every piece of equipment I have it. My whole downstairs is completely covered. I work out for 2 hours every morning because I know I'm getting old. And then I go up to the school and I do that every morning, 4 days a week, not every morning. 4 days a week I do my 2-hour workout. I have a treadmill. I have my own bike. I have maybe 30, 40 pieces of equipment down there. It's not in one room. It's the whole. It takes up my whole basement. And she has been on the journey with me to see that I'm eating healthy. But the other thing is that I still teach. Now I have students that teach, and people say, "Why do you still go to your school every day? You don't have any black belts that will help you?" I said, "No, I've got a lot of black belts, but guys, I don't do this. You guys may not believe this. I want to make a decent living. I want to take care of the family. I want to do all that. I want to have the most successful business school. That's why EFC and all like that all these years. I'm still a member of EFC." I said, but at the end of the day, I'm still a martial artist. I still like getting on the floor. To see me out in the field now during this shutdown, we're on a big field, and I'm out there. I'm juiced, and people are going, "How long have you been teaching?" I said, I started teaching in 71, but I still love getting on the floor. Now, Jerry, I can't kick like you anymore. I mean, I can't, and I'm not dropping.
Neither can I. Oh, neither drop I can do, but you know what I'm saying. I'm
I
working
can't
on
do-
it. I'm working on it.
I have people come in from time to time doing TV stuff, and they'll say, Master Brown, could we get you to see you do one of the forms? Could see you do a form? And I said, I tell you what, go online. That Eagle form you saw me do, that Eagle set that you saw me do from China at Howard University many years ago. Go online and look at that. That's me. Or the last time a TV group came in and said, we want to see you perform that Eagle set that everybody knew you for, which was later on. I did other forms way before that. But I went in, I brought up my top student, a young teenage guy that was about, at the time, 15, 16. And I said, do the Eagle form. And he came out and he smoked it. And I said, that's me right there. I don't want you to I don't want you to see me do the form the way I do it now in my 70s. I want you to see the form the way I did it at that time. So there's no ego. I don't do a lot of performing. You know, I'm gonna get out there because I don't want to be remembered. I don't want to be that old guy still out there trying to do the Tiger set or something like that. And I'm saying, picture me doing it a little bit lower and a little bit stronger and a little bit faster. Said I can remember every form. I can teach it to you exactly the way it should be done. But part of wisdom is knowing when it's time to pass it on to the next generation. So I'm on the floor 6 days a week, but I have guys and I still teach a lot of classes, not all of them, but I like to come out at the end and tweak it, you know, and let the SWAT team go. So I hopefully, God willing, I'll stay out there as long as the guys like you that remember. But you know, I pray that guys like you will stay around a long time, because when the Jerry Fontanez's of the world get pissed and decided I'm through with this karate stuff, y'all done pissed me off, I don't want to do it anymore, a lot of our legacies, a lot of our history will be forgotten. They can write it down in books, but seeing you tell the story is just opens it up, because you have to see the man tell it. When you start talking about the old days, it's live. It's not like we were at Madison Square Garden and Joe Hayes was there and this. It's not that. These are guys that lived it, and it brings our careers to life.
That's my inspiration. When people ask me, can you still do that? I go, but I'm working on it because because what's happened in recent years, I've really made it. I have a new goal, right? This goal that I have is to influence via nutrition the children.
Yeah.
The majority of the students are children. When the pandemic hit, the number one reason why most of them are being bullied in most of my students was because of their physical appearance.
Yeah.
Their low self-esteem came because of some form of obesity in many cases, not all cases, but many cases. So having kids stay home and they're getting worse and worse shape, having people younger having asthma and diabetes and all these different things, and we know it's based on the intake of the food source. You was into this craziness, as people call it. I stopped eating red meat in 1988 and pork also, and I cheated with chicken a few times, which I might today, but realistically, that's not what would be the best results outside. You take care of the inside, then the outside can perform. I strongly believe that, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir here. But my new mission is being able to help children when they're at home. So, I'm part of a group, that a whole bunch of people that you actually know. And my mission is having 300 martial arts instructors in 26 countries by January 10th to go and help the world one dojo, kwan of dojang at a time. Because we're not helping these kids. We train them and then they go home and mess it up.
Yeah.
Or they play in the machine. So my heart breaks when I see, a kid have asthma, diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's what our friends are dying from. Children are dying from the knife and the fork.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, man?
They're confusing it. We're in the self-defense business. Self-defense is not just fighting. That's a big part of it. Self-defense is not just keeping yourself in the top shape. That's part of it. Self-defense is how you eat. It's how you sleep. It's getting enough rest. Self-defense to me is anything that defends one's self. So if you're doing all this right, but then you're not taking care of your way you eat, you're not exercising, you're not getting to sleep, then yeah, you're not a martial artist. You're just a fighter. Now, there's a lot of guys that can fight. I mean, can take you out. But I look at them, they're not martial artists. I look at their attitudes. I look at the egos. I say, no, you're not martial artists, but you are an amazing fighter. And if you're fighting that guy, I'm gonna bet on you because I want to make my money. But I don't confuse when they talk about a martial artist. Style doesn't come to my head. Systems, schools, people come to my head. That's a martial artist. He lives it, he sleeps it, and that's what I'm hoping that I'll be remembered for. Not the EFC guy, the NASCAR guy, the Shaolin guy, the Kung Fu guy, the China guy. This was somebody who believed in what we were teaching. He believed in martial arts. Martial arts is was my lifestyle, and I'll try to do that until I'm gone. You know, I got 2 years ago, I got the top honor of my life. I got invited to come to Taiwan with my instructor, Mr. Lin from 1970. And I went to Taiwan and I got a chance to meet the last of the Ten Shan Pai, which is my style, the last of the elders there. The oldest guy had studied with Master Lin's instructor in 1936. His instructors passed, but there's only 30 guys left there. Mr. Lin is considered the senior disciple after Wang Jie-jin, Mr. Lin's teacher's teacher. They took me by his home where he grew up, the little place in the backyard where it all started when he fled mainland China, you know, Kuomintang, and then where Mr. Lin learned and all like that. Well, long story short, at the end of the 2 weeks, they had a huge banquet, invited the mayor of Taichung there, all the elders left in the Ten Shan Pai, and they had what they call a Bai Shir ceremony. And they said, believe it or not, we're Chinese, but very few of our kids, they're trying to be doctors, lawyers. Very few of them have followed our footsteps in martial arts. And believe it or not, you in America probably have been doing the Ten Shan Pai longer with more schools, more this than anybody. You are actually carrying the legacy now through Mr. Lin. So you trace your thing from Mr. Lin's instructor, Wang Jie-jin, to Lin Shiquan, which is my instructor's name, to you. And they said, we hear there's some discrepancy about whether or not you are the senior disciple in your system in America. They signed a certificate with their pictures, all in Chinese, saying, we're recognizing you as the #1 disciple for us, the Ten Shan Pai people from our lineage. And gave me a sheet and said, show this to anybody, even in Taiwan right now. And I know there's other people that are doing it all over the country, but that group of elders, along with the city elders, they call it it's a very secretive ceremony that we go through, and they made me the Eben, the #1 disciple for Ten Shan Pai today. So those are things that I carry in my heart, and little things like that. Going to China if I have time one day, I'll tell you about the last trip I did where I was invited to Hebei province in China, me and my wife, and arrived to 2 stretch limos, got a chance to meet with the #3 man in President Xi's administration. Came out to see us. They brought out over 2,000 people to perform for me and my wife. They took us everywhere in China by limos. We met the mayors of most of the big cities in that Hebei province, and found at the end they had me speak up before almost 2,000 people in the Hebei province. And on my wall in my school right now, they delivered a large certificate that says, we recognize you as the premier of Wang Chi He, Tai Chi Chuan system of Tai Chi in America. The last tournament we had, they were going to present me with that certificate on stage at the nighttime show. The plane got messed up. They didn't come until Sunday morning, but they were going to do that presentation on the stage. But they stayed for a week and trained with my students, went to the Communist China or Red China or the People's Republic of China embassy We sat in the chairs where the premier sits when he comes, where Obama and Michelle, we got a picture of me and Andrea sitting in the same chairs with Obama and Michelle behind them, and got recognized at the embassy here as they recognize us as the representative for that whole province in mainland China. I can't get into that because that's a whole nother story. I mean, I left there thinking, are you sure you guys know who I am? I mean, it literally was like, every place I went, Jerry, I'll tell you the story later on, but I never went anywhere where there wasn't at least 15 people at the table. Whatever city we went to, the mayor was there, all the dignitaries was there. They were toasting me all night long, and I don't even drink. And you know, some of the things they gave us, the gifts they gave us that are just priceless, the places that they took us, apple orchards, peach pear orchards, and cameras following me going up in the pear trees and the kung fu. It was just unbelievable. I had a whole floor, not a presidential suite. The floor with the presidential suites has 3 presidential suites. Above that, they had rebuilt a whole floor for just us. So another time we'll get together, we'll talk about that. Miss Brown is looking at me crazy. Well, Jerry talk. The problem is I talk a lot. Jerry talks a lot. My wife.
Listen, we're in trouble. Okay, so listen, we're gonna end this, but obviously he already made a public commitment to be able to visit us in the near future. And all I have to say again, I'm proud of you. When I say AB, man, you know what to say. AB, we out of here. Thank you very much. God bless. This is real. Bye-bye. Thank you. And Chola, sorry, honey. Sorry, dear.
We're okay.
We out of here. Thank you. God bless.
Talk with you again.
Bye-bye.
Much love.
Much love.